Ethan fell silent as he concentrated, molding the high-frequency void energy exactly as Ruoning had instructed. In an instant, a sphere of purple-black light swirled into being in his outstretched palm. At the same moment, the heavenly god of war lunged forward with his sword. The blade pulsed with a god-slaying force, powerful enough to shatter a third-generation divine body in one strike. And even a fourth-generation warrior would find such an attack nearly impossible to withstand, second only to a pure void energy assault. The two powers met with a thunderous impact, but Ethan's void energy held firm. The god-slaying power faltered and collapsed under the relentless frequency of his charge. Had the Tao Te King Shi-Ho stood in Ethan's place, the result would have been very different. No ordinary opponent could match the black hole engine's unparalleled frequency. Even the mightiest of divine strikes would dissipate against it. Unless he wielded the fourth-generation divine body's god-killing power, his genetic engine alone had already elevated the god-killing force to a qualitatively new level, enough to challenge and cancel out the high-frequency void energy. All the surrounding war deities reeled under those void energy strikes. The oscillations were wreaking havoc on their own genetic engines. In that instant, Angel Leng's genetic engine chimed in with an alert. High-frequency void energy fluctuations detected. Deploy void barrier? Void barrier. Angel Leng recognized it as a shield protocol against void energy, one of the Galaxy Power Supergene's modules that Ethan had implanted in her. She'd never had time to explore its depths or activate its functions manually. Now she had no choice but to obey the prompt. Deploy the void barrier, she ordered, her voice calm and decisive. At once, a golden cube shimmered into existence overhead. It expanded rapidly, forming a protective enclosure around everyone inside. Void energy strike detected. Initiate neutralization? The barrier's system queried. Initiate, Angel Leng confirmed. Neutralizing void energy, 10%, 50%, 100%. A low hum filled the air as the barrier's field solidified. Within its confines, the disruptive ripples of void energy were stripped away entirely, restoring stability to the genetic engines of all enclosed. Outside the golden shield, the battle continued to rage, its void energy assaults now powerless against this invisible fortress. Chapter X. Void energy nullification complete. Like clockwork, the assault of void energy faded away, and in an instant, the god of war, the heavenly soldiers, the celestial generals, and Reyna all snapped back to full strength. The angel's eyes gleamed with cold fascination. This was the first time she had ever felt the might of such a potent genetic engine. Could this be the galaxy's legendary power that the Queen spoke of? What's happening? My king's void energy. Ethan's voice caught in his throat. He had been perfectly confident. A high-frequency void strike would cripple every enemy, leaving them weak and helpless. Instead, his energy had inexplicably vanished, and their adversaries were suddenly back on their feet, unscathed. He spun to Ruoning and Snow, the only two people in the vicinity who might explain this anomaly. Snow studied the gleaming golden frame at the center of the field, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. After a long, tense moment, he shook his head in disbelief. There's no known defense against void energy, he said quietly. Nothing should be able to cancel it out, yet that's exactly what just happened. Hui's voice trembled with a mix of excitement and dread. There's a very good chance my bumbling apprentice has actually gotten her hands on a void engine. Ruoning's eyes lit up as she turned to Angel Leng. She really has one? Angel Leng remained silent, her expression calm and unnervingly inscrutable. Hui took a steadying breath. He'd witnessed the void engine's destructive might firsthand and knew exactly why they were both on edge. Don't panic, he urged. Your black hole engine is Carl's ultimate masterpiece. Even the Tao Te King Shi-Ho, who also wields a void engine, can't stand up to it. Ruoning frowned, sensing the cracks in his confident tone. This isn't some minor skirmish, she warned. We're dealing with the heavenly civilization. Who knows what kind of void engine Ethan will field? That bastard's gear might eclipse everything we've ever seen. Hui bristled at her doubt. Even if my apprentice were supremely fortunate, chosen as Ethan's guardian, he still couldn't gift her the finest void engine in existence. Ruoning's gaze hardened. Then let knowledge be the measure. When it comes to void engine theory, you hold the upper hand. A flicker of pride warmed Huaye's chest as he looked at Angel Leng. And no one understands these engines better than I do, certainly not my hapless apprentice. He paused, struck by a sudden tenderness as Angel Leng met his eyes without a trace of uncertainty. In that silent moment, all his fears receded. She might be reckless, she might be inexperienced, but she was theirs, brilliant, determined, and at the very heart of everything that would follow. Ethan regarded every beauty from beyond the celestial order with scorn. Only female angels ever held his interest. The valiant Angel Leng in particular stirred memories of the very first Kesha. Huaye caught Ethan's eye, then turned to Ruoning with a sly smile. "If you can defeat Angel Leng and then ally yourselves with Ethan," he purred, "wouldn't that make you master and disciple?" Ruoning saw the malice flicker in Huaye's expression. He never spoke without a hidden agenda. Still, the scheme barely registered. Ancient angels like her had endured far worse in the old celestial palace. She remembered all too well the day she had stood in for Kesha. Every torment Huaye could inflict, she had felt in full. At that moment, Angel Leng summoned her Galaxy Power Super Gene Engine and laid out its architecture in a cascade of holographic interfaces. To her, the engine's design was an open book, each program branch clear at a glance. With its full computing power brought online, she felt her intellect expand. Within seconds, she'd mastered the system's basic functions. First, and most urgent, was the activation of the Void Barrier, a shimmering shield engineered to neutralize any void energy assault. Ethan watched the data streams cascade across his console. Everything depended on the relative frequencies of the two void engines, and on the computing power and energy reserves each side could throw at the confrontation. Fortunately, the Galaxy Power Gene Engine possessed a crucial second feature, an anti-void defense. "Okay, I'm ready," Ethan said, fingers poised above the activation sequence. "Ruoning, I'm going to probe Angel Leng's void signature with my black hole engine." Ruoning gave a curt nod. "Go ahead." Ethan hit execute, and instantly his display lit up with an alert. "Void intrusion detected? Engage anti-void capability?" Without hesitation, he selected yes. The Galaxy Power Gene Engine roared into action, its anti-void protocols locking down within milliseconds. Angel Leng's attempted counter-intrusion fizzled out before it could even register, and, in the same instant, Ethan felt his connection severed as cleanly as if it had never existed. He stared at the blank interface in disbelief. "What's going on, Ruoning? I can't penetrate your apprentice's defenses." Ruoning frowned. "That's impossible. You used the algorithm I wrote for you, didn't you?" Ethan swallowed, double-checking his code. Something wasn't adding up, but by the look on Ruoning's face, he wasn't the only one scratching his head. "I don't even know how to run an algorithm." Huaye snapped, his voice edged with frustration. "First you all criticize me for never opening a book, and now you're accusing me of not even understanding basic calculations? That's impossible. Run it again." Ruoning opened her mouth to reply, but Angel Leng cut in with a calm steeliness. "Terminate the target algorithm." The rippling Kura, entice of void energy around Huaye, stuttered and died. He stumbled back, eyes wide. "What? Stop right there, Ruoning. Is your algorithm malfunctioning?" Angel Leng hovered several feet off the ground, her feet barely clearing the floor. A soft, mechanical voice resonated in the chamber. "Analyzing target. Classifier generation Styx divine body, second angelic divine body. Importing Galaxy Power database. Constructing third-generation divine body structural strike function." Huaye's heart pounded as the system whirred to life, unseen energies coalescing around Angel Leng. Whatever assault she was preparing, it drew on ancient godlike patterns. Patterns Huaye still couldn't control. He glanced at Ruoning, whose normally confident expression had gone eerily blank. The room fell deathly silent, each heartbeat echoing against the walls. Angel Leng's lips curved in a slight, knowing smile. "Prepare yourself," she whispered, "for the true measure of power." Chapter 262, Angel Leng Shows His Might. Ethan hovered at the threshold of the dark plane and activated his Galaxy Power Super Gene Engine. Instantly, the cockpit's holographic interface sprang to life around him. System, opening operation interface, analyzing target. Ethan tapped a command. Ethan, invade target gene system. System, target classification body life form. System, detected energy level 100%. Estimated invasion difficulty 50%. System, recalculating, revised invasion difficulty 10%. A grin flickered across Ethan's face. Ethan, execute solve target gene architecture. System, importing Shenbody technical data. System, loading gene architecture algorithm. System, engaging analysis, third generation Shenbody gene structure. The progress bar jumped, then stalled. System, warning, target gene architecture extremely stable, solving difficulty escalated to 90%. System, detecting internal equipment, Styx version black hole engine installed. Ethan's expression hardened. The Styx black hole engine was notorious for its unfathomable density and near-infinite entropy barrier. Any ordinary gene engineer would have been forced to withdraw. But Ethan was no ordinary engineer. He leaned forward, fingers dancing over the controls. Holographic strands of gene data spiraled around him like living serpents. They pulsed with raw, chaotic energy as he initiated the final protocol. Angel Leng Protocol. Activate. At once, a brilliant cascade of golden runes flooded the interface. The Shenbody's genomic fortress shuddered under the assault. Each rune flared, slicing through the black hole engine's entropy field. System, Angel Leng subroutine engaged. Invasion difficulty dropping, 90%, 70, 50%. Light flared and the data strands unraveled in perfect controlled arcs. Within seconds, the unbreakable gene architecture was laid bare before Ethan's eyes. System, invasion successful, gene architecture mapped, command complete. Ethan straightened, satisfaction gleaming in his eyes. Angel Leng had done what no one else could. The secrets of the Shenbody were now his, and with them, the power to reshape the tide of battle across the cosmos. Ethan's interface lit up with a cascade of commands as he synchronized his mind to the ship's core. Set core computing frequency to 60. Integrate Angel Gene Strike Protocol. Activate Advanced Concept Reconstruction Module. Enable Spatial Structure Redefinition. Deploy Void Assault Routine. Initiate Black Hole Calculation Engine. Execute Anti-Void Computation, Anti-Kinetic Energy Suppression. Load Life Energy Dampening Algorithm. Engage Dark Energy Containment Sequence. Construct Void Isolation Barrier. Seal barrier against temporal and spatial flux. Finalize Void Isolation Concept. Parameters incomprehensible. In the span of seconds, Ethan's systems, now vastly more powerful than when Queen Kesha first bestowed upon him her computational blessing, ran through these complex processes without missing a beat. But the true game-changer was the Galaxy Force's anti-void capability. Designed to destabilize and destroy any void-based engine at its core, it wielded a power rumored to eclipse the divine itself, enough to fell a god in one fell swoop. A palpable weight pressed down on the clearing. Huaye, Ruoning, and Snow staggered, their auras flickering as the anti-void field relentlessly drained their life and dark energies. The very forces they commanded seemed to shrivel in Ethan's engineered void. Snow's voice cracked in disbelief. What are you doing to us? Ethan watched in steely silence as the shimmering barrier snapped shut around his three foes, cutting off the flow of time and space within. Trapped in that nothingness, their powers were neutralized, every edge they once had now rendered useless. And in that still, silent cage, Ethan held all the advantage. I'm exhausted, Huaye gasped, staggering under the strain. Ruoning glared at him. Didn't you say your void engine in X-Ling lipsed my apprentice's power? What a joke. He's outstripping you. Huaye's face twisted in disbelief. This can't be happening. Forget that, Ruoning snapped, urgency in his voice. Find a countermeasure now. Before Huaye could reply, an archangel hovering above them spoke in a chilling, mechanized tone, initiating analysis of target core structure. Analysis failed, target resisting. Authorize void energy bombardment. The angel wasted no time. A sphere of pure void energy materialized in its grasp, far more devastating than any mere dark energy bomb. With one command, it hurled the orb straight at Huaye. The impact was catastrophic. The void blast shattered Huaye's third-generation divine body in an instant and sent his black hole engine into paralysis. Chains of anti-reality erupted through him, mercilessly devouring his life force. Energy bled from his form in searing black streams. Carl, help me! Huaye's cry echoed with desperation as he collapsed, flickering between life and death. From above, the angel's voice rang out again. Second void energy bomb, ready to deploy. Huaye's eyes fluttered, fear overtaking every last spark of pride. There would be no mercy this time. An unimaginable surge of void energy erupted, its strange crackling waves expanding in an instant. Before anyone could react, a second bombardment struck. Ruoning staggered under the impact, reeling as shockwaves of dark power washed over her. She simply couldn't believe the strength radiating from her apprentice, Ethan. Did the Tiandao civilization really entrust such a devastating void engine to a raw student? Or did they consider this level of power trivial? It didn't make sense. Heavenly soldiers and divine beings alike had no need of void engines. Yet here was Ethan, unleashing them with terrifying ease. Black and violet light poured from Ruo Ning's 7 orifices and crackled across her skin. Void energy, relentless and corrosive, was devouring her divine body from within. Had she not cultivated to the 4th generation of the divine form, she would already be collapsing to the ground, screaming in agony like Huaye. But as a 4th-generation divine being, Ruoning possessed the automatic aggregation function. It could draw in and neutralize destructive energies with perfect efficiency. Even when Huaye's body became incomplete under a similar assault, the void energy he absorbed dispersed harmlessly into the air. Now, however, she could only grit her teeth and brace herself. If Ethan, her apprentice, was this formidable already, what fate awaited those who faced him next? Ruoning's divine body snapped back together on its own, drawing every last fragment of void energy into her atomic structure. Gasping, she staggered forward. "Leng, I am your master." She forced the words past her lips. "Master." Angel Leng held her gaze with cold steadiness, then shook his head and sighed. "You are no longer my master." He had no intention of letting her go. If Ruoning lived, she would pose an even greater threat to the angel civilization. She knew its secrets too well. Ever since he had risen to become the guardian angel of the Tiandao realm and awakened his super gene, earning the title Galaxy Power Lightning God Leng, his outlook had shifted. Whether in public or in secret, he intended to eliminate both Ruoning and her companion, Huaye. At that moment, his attention snapped back to the present. A disturbance in his void barrier. Impossible! His recordings made it clear that no one could breach a sealed void barrier linked to dark energy space. And yet, the intrusion was real, and there had been no sign that the seal was weakening. Angel Leng's eyes narrowed as he braced himself for whatever force had just broken through his defenses. Ethan's eyes blazed with determination as he tapped into the Galaxy Force's anti-void protocol. A crackling wave of energy rippled outward, instantly corrupting every void calculation in its path, save for Angel Leng and the other Galaxy Force operatives standing with him. "Activate anti-void. D-field," he commanded. "Shut down every void algorithm." Angel Leng didn't hesitate. Violet symbols flared around her as she forced her own anti-void barrier into existence. At that moment, a massive purple skull of condensed void sprang into being and swallowed Huaye, Ruoning, Snow Sumali, and the rest of their team, just seconds before the second volley of void bombardment struck. The two powers collided in midair. A shockwave fractured space itself, sending Ethan and the others skidding back nearly 100 meters. The air tore apart with raw void energy, and terrifying fluctuations disintegrated the ground beneath their feet. "Don't even think about running," Ethan roared over the roar of destruction. Angel Leng shot out her hand and wove another void barrier overhead. It fell like a cage around the purple skull, but instead of trapping its prey, the skull pulsed once and then vanished into a yawning rift in space. Angel Leng staggered back, eyes wide with disbelief. Her anti-void suppression had been powerless against whatever force had animated that skull. How could it override her field, she wondered. Beside her, Lena stared at the empty air, utterly baffled. In that stunned silence, the only certainty was that their enemy had just shown them a brand new level of power, and that surviving it would demand everything they had left. Ethan watched Angel Leng ascend, his form wreathed in a soft, otherworldly glow. With a single, deliberate gesture, Angel Leng halted every void space calculation, the very foundation of the dark lattice imprisoning Panjen. In an instant, the void cage unraveled, and Panjen collapsed to the ground in a tangle of limbs and disoriented gasps. Nearby, the once arrogant Huaye and Ruoning crashed to their knees, battered and bleeding. Ethan's heart pounded as he realized an invisible chasm had opened between himself and the formidable Liang civilization. The arcane techniques, The furious energy readings, even the language of the battlefield, slipped beyond his comprehension. All he could do was stand there, stunned, as the tide of battle shifted before his eyes. Chapter 263. Liang submits to heaven. Pan Zhen crashed heavily onto the courtyard's stone floor and lay there, utterly drained. The void energy that had been unleashed against him had sapped every ounce of his strength. Not even Angel Yan fared much better. Though she'd only grazed Huaye's sword, its void-infused edge had suppressed her sacred form. If Angel Qing hadn't thrown herself between Yan and the deadly blade, Yan would have died on the spot. Even Qing's intervention came at great cost. She barely managed to shield Yan long enough to let her recover. As for Pan Zhen, a third-generation god of formidable reputation, he remained prostrate, completely overpowered. "Uncle Pan Zhen!" Lena dropped to her knees and struggled to lift him. She'd always found the old regent stern, sometimes even distant, and yet now, seeing him so battered and vulnerable, she felt panic rise in her chest. What if she wasn't ready to shoulder the burdens he bore? If Pan Zhen fell here and now, who would hold up the sky of Liang civilization? The thought had never truly unsettled her before, but after witnessing these events, Lena knew she had to face that responsibility, and fast. Is that truly the goddess? Pan Zhen sat in a trance until he recognized Reina standing before him, and then he let out a long, weary sigh. He hadn't heard a word from her in months and had vowed to scour the universe until he found her. Now, reunited at last, and under such grim circumstances, his relief was tinged with sorrow. "I'm so sorry, Uncle Pan Zhen," Reina said, her voice trembling as she stepped forward. Pan Zhen's expression grew grave. "Reina, my goddess, our Liang civilization is in peril. The Death Song Academy has set its sights on you and on our Light of the Sun." He paused, recalling how Karl, the god of death, coveted their civilization's beloved beacon. If a single hound summoned by Karl could threaten them so easily, Liang was truly vulnerable. The known universe felt like a stranger now, perilous and changed, and he realized how little they understood of its machinations. "Don't worry, Uncle Pan Zhen," Reina replied, determination shining in her eyes. "We've already driven them off." Pan Zhen forced a bitter smile. Even now, she clung to hope. "Thanks to His Excellency Angel Leng," he murmured. They both knew, however, that even Angel Leng's aid might not be enough to protect Liang from the gathering storm. "Your Highness, thank you for your support, and my gratitude to everyone of the Heavenly Tao," Pan Zhen said, bowing slightly. He turned to Angel Leng and the others. Ever since Angel Leng's ascension to godhood, Pan Zhen had addressed him as Your Highness. Angel Leng only shook his head, his expression calm. "There's no need to thank me," Angel Leng replied. "Reina is my princess of the Heavenly Tao, and this time she fought under her true identity." Pan Zhen inclined his head, though inside he weighed his own designs. He knew full well that the Liang civilization was doomed, yet Princess Reina's achievement was no small thing. She had secured the Heavenly Tao civilization's support. Admittedly, it stung to see Liang's own empress become a princess of another realm, and Pan Zhen felt genuine pity for His Majesty, Emperor Hongkun. But in the face of the Heavenly Tao's overwhelming might and Liang's crushing losses, there was nothing left to bargain for. At least now, thanks to Reina, their civilization would not be utterly destroyed. Pan Zhen paced the polished marble floor of the Sky Temple's inner sanctum, his mind racing. As long as the sun still shone, he knew the Death Song Academy would never cease its covetous advance. And how long could the Heavenly Tao civilization continue to shield Liang solely for Reina's sake? Heavenly Tao, was our fate really to bow forever under their protection? In a heartbeat, his decision crystallized. "Goddess," he intoned, voice steady despite the turmoil in his heart, "I wish to petition the God King." Reina's eyes widened. The single ardid petition told her everything. Pan Zhen meant to surrender Liang's sovereignty outright. Moments later, Ethan stood before them in the temple's vaulted chamber. Reina's return had thrown him into visible unease. He glanced at Pan Zhen, then hesitated, as though words were lodged in his throat. Ethan, ever perceptive even without telepathy, already guessed the truth. Without a word, Pan Zhen fell to one knee on the gleaming floor tiles. "On behalf of the entire Liang civilization," he declared, "I lay before you the light of our sun, In return, we seek only this, that the Heavenly Tao civilization accept our submission. Ethan's dark eyes narrowed in surprise. There was no preamble, no haggling, just a firm, unequivocal pledge. He stepped forward, voice low but clear. This is total submission, not a merger nor asylum. Panjen bowed his head, resolute. Yes, my lord, we offer ourselves entirely to your rule. Have you consulted the sun god? Panjen asked, his voice low. Ethan met his gaze steadily. My god has given his blessing. Panjen bowed his head thoughtfully. Emperor Hongkun, the sun god, what remains of him now is little more than a fragment of consciousness, a dark data backup spun off when he took his own life. Call it Emperor Hongkun or the sun god, it's all the same. In truth, the Liang civilization yearns only for peace and prosperity. But they've discovered that the very light they once worshipped can no longer deliver it. He paused, choosing his words carefully. That realization is why I resolved to bring Liang into the fold of the Heavenly Tao. This isn't some testament to your personal influence, Ethan. It's simply that Liang has run out of viable options in the known universe. He looked up again, his expression grim. Consider our rivals, the Death Song Academy, who worship only death and have converted the Styx Nebula into a wasteland where only mindless beasts survive. We won't stoop to their nihilistic creed. Then there's the faltering angel civilization, a proud people but in irreversible decline, and the newly awakening heavenly scum faction, unpredictable and fierce. We weighed an alliance with the angels, but any union with them would sever the fiery sun civilization's very source of divine power. Panjen stepped back, conviction radiating from him. So we have chosen the path of the Heavenly Tao. With the sun god's own sanction, however artificial that sanction may be, Liang will seek its future under a higher order, and from there we will forge the peace and prosperity our people have long been denied. Right now, they'll almost certainly have to join forces with the angelic civilization to stand against both the heavenly scum and the Styx. The Liang people have already been dealt a crippling blow. Only the Tiandao civilization's timely intervention enabled them to repel the Tianzi army. Yet those same Tianzi forces remain dug in deep within the Tiandao galaxy. Even if Liang pledged its surrender to the angels, the angelic civilization simply doesn't have the resources to support them. And there's no real advantage in surrendering to the Tianzi. They're no kinder than the Styx. From the moment it appeared, the Tiandao civilization proved itself an indomitable power, unrivaled in the cosmos. It remains Liang's best and only hope. This time around, the Tiandao's backing is unmistakable. Remember Huaye, whose unchecked arrogance nearly brought Liang to its knees? He was soundly defeated, and had it not been for Death God Karl's intervention, Huaye would have died on the spot. Meanwhile, the goddess Lena has been elevated to princess through her marriage to God King Ethan. She may not hold the title of queen, but that status alone grants her tremendous influence. Ethan studied Panjen with steely calm. You understand the tenets of the Heavenly Tao. My will is absolute, and none may stand against it. Panjen dropped to one knee, head bowed. Of course, your radiance. The God King's supremacy is beyond question. He forced himself to meet Ethan's gaze. There was no time left for Goddess Reyna to mature on her own. Too many forces were at play across the known universe. Panjen's confidence in Liang had evaporated. Better, he decided, to bargain for whatever advantage he could. Though I hold little personal regard for the light of the sun, he conceded, voice low, for Reyna's sake I consent. The Liang civilization shall submit to the way of heaven. At Ethan's command, the air shimmered. Energy coalesced around a single point, and Goddess Reyna appeared in a soft glow. Ethan turned, expression unreadable, as Panjen prepared to fulfill his pledge. Chapter 264, The Ninth Heaven of the Heavenly Civilization. Lena sat before Ethan in his private audience chamber, her thoughts in turmoil. Had he really summoned her just to discuss this? The announcement was simple yet earth-shattering. In the near future, Liang would cease to be a mere vassal and be fully absorbed into the Tiandao realm, no longer a subordinate civilization, but an integral part of the ever-expanding Tiandao Empire. What surprised both Lena and Panjen most was the enthusiastic reception among the people of Liang. When Panjen had officially proclaimed the union, he'd braced for resistance or even outrage. Instead, the masses greeted the decree with open arms. After all, ancient records once referred to Liang itself as the Tiandao civilization. Many saw this merger as a long-overdue homecoming, a chance to honor their storied heritage. Though the political reality was far more nuanced, neither Pan Zhen nor Lena had anticipated such overwhelming popular support. Yet a practical problem loomed large. Liang's star lay at the very edge of Tiandao influence. Any supplies or reinforcements would have to traverse the legendary Great Insect Bridge and pass through the perilous Insect Gate, an interstellar journey spanning countless light-years from the Tiandao galaxy. And in sheer scale, the Tiandao galaxy dwarfed even the Milky Way. After a thoughtful pause, Pan Zhen knelt and spoke with respectful candor. Your Majesty, to maintain effective governance and ensure rapid support for Liang, may I propose relocating the seat of the Tiandao realm closer to the Tiandao galaxy itself? Lena exchanged a glance with Ethan, the weight of his suggestion settling between them like a star vessel preparing for warp. Wouldn't that be more fitting? Pan Zhen pressed. Lena's eyes brightened at the suggestion. She turned to Ethan. You're right, Ethan. Let's venture into the Tiandao galaxy. The Milky Way can belong to Ge Xiaolun, no, to Zhao Xin. She caught herself and smiled crookedly. Ge Xiaolun had already defected to the devils, and Zhao Xin now held sway. Frankly, I'll go wherever I please. Ethan paused, regarding her calmly. Unfazed, Lena hopped up and settled on his thigh, as if seeking his support. The significance of the upcoming August 15th pressed on her. It was a turning point she wouldn't ignore, not even for someone as formidable as Du Changwei. Ethan shifted to sit upright. He cleared his throat, uncertain what Lena's boldness implied. Your Majesty, he began, now that the Liang and Tiandao civilizations are united under your rule, when will their armies be formally inducted into the Celestial Guard and the ranks of the deities? Lena leaned back against him, her expression nonchalant. Pan Zhen frowned at the display of intimacy. Such casual familiarity hardly suited imperial protocol. Yet even she could see Lena's ambition, already turning toward the untapped power of the Liang civilization. Pan Zhen leaned forward, earnest. If our people from the Liang civilization could be enrolled as heavenly warriors, or even appointed as gods within Tiandao, we'd finally be recognized as one of you. Without that status, we're nothing more than rootless duckweed. We're willing to sacrifice everything for Tiandao, but we fear we'll still be treated as second class. Ethan regarded him coolly. I'll make the application, he said, voice steady. But understand this, there are already countless heroes in Tiandao with accumulated merits. Even if I sign off on it, you'll have to join the back of the line. I'm prepared to wait, Pan Zhen replied without hesitation. As he watched Ethan's expression remain unchanged, Pan Zhen realized the truth of the God King's words. First, Tiandao would need to test Liang's sincere submission before granting any rewards. And second, precious resources, like the super genes, were tightly controlled by the super god hierarchy. Allocations were planned long before each gene was even synthesized, with priorities determined strictly by merit. Even a ruler of gods, Ethan included, could not simply bend the rules, especially for a civilization that had yet to prove itself worthy of special favors. The King of Gods rules over countless lesser deities and must always weigh their counsel. Even divine beings, with families and alliances to protect, can be tempted to turn public authority into private profit, but on the celestial stage, they exercise remarkable restraint. For Pan Zhen, then, this period of waiting posed no hardship. On the contrary, by accumulating meritorious deeds, he stood to earn super genes, and he was certain that the people of Liang would rise to the occasion. Lena opened her mouth to speak, but Pan Zhen tapped her arm, signaling her to remain silent. At that moment, Ethan stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. Here in the king's domain, the way of Liang and the heavenly Tao are one and the same. Pan Zhen exhaled, relief flooding him. If Ethan spoke with the authority of the King of Gods, no one could dispute it. Understood, he replied, bowing low. Shortly thereafter, the 4 ancient guardians of the Liang civilization were formally inducted as gods of the heavenly Tao. Already majestic as third-generation deities, their elevation ensured their names, and their power would echo through the heavens for all eternity. In the distant past, the elders of the Liang civilization enjoyed unparalleled prestige across the known universe. Today, however, their star has dimmed. The heavenly Tao civilization now boasts dozens of deities, and Pan-Gen himself was elevated, worshipped from this day forward as God Pan-Gen. The Liang elders, lacking divine status, naturally no longer command the same reverence they once did. Lena felt a whirl of conflicting emotions at first. Yet as she watched the people of Liang quietly pack their belongings, only a handful remained behind, she realized how much their fortunes had changed. Once, life on Liang's star had been a constant battle just to keep the world from tearing itself apart. Now, thanks to Ethan's genius, they are settled on a colossal battle celestial body, a planetary-level super battleship whose scale rivals that of Earth itself. Even in the entire Super Seminary universe, nothing like it exists. Inside this engineered world, the spatial dimensions of Supreme Heaven have been completely overhauled, providing living space equal to 10 Earths. In this new home, the refugees of Liang civilization have seen their standard of living leap forward in ways they never dared imagine. What was once a precarious struggle for survival has become a life of comfort and possibility, a transformation both Lena and the Liang elders could scarcely have dreamed of in the old days. Ethan had arranged the realm into what he called the 9 heavens. In myth and legend, there truly were 9 heavens, but 9 here is less a literal count than a symbol of vastness and limitlessness. So when Ethan spoke of the 9 heavens, he meant an almost infinite expanse divided into 9 directional domains. 1. Juntian at the center. 2. Kangtian to the east. 3. Biantian in the northeast. 4. Xuantian to the north. 5. Yuqian in the northwest. 6. Haotian to the west. 7. Zhutian in the southwest. 8. Yantian to the south. 9. Yangtian in the southeast. Officially, these divisions were meant to house the citizens of the Tiandao civilization. In reality, however, Tiandao had never been populous enough to fill so many heavens. To preserve the illusion, Ethan simply drew inhabitants from his own imperial dimension. After all, in this very 9 heavens, he reigned as an omniscient, omnipotent sovereign, capable of creating entire populations at will. When the emissaries from the Liang civilization arrived, they could hardly believe their eyes. Tens of thousands of beings, each claiming to be native to Tiandao, gathered under the skies of all 9 domains, a spectacle carefully engineered by Ethan to bolster the credibility of his grand design. Lena stared in disbelief. Had the Tiandao really escorted an entire civilization with them? Deployed a battle starship? Their audacity was staggering. They'd even revealed their base in the midst of the war. Then she noticed something else. Every Tiandao bore a mark between their brows, a vertical stripe that usually glowed silver but occasionally shone gold. Curious, she turned to Ethan. "What's that mark on their foreheads?" Ethan met her gaze calmly. "That's a dark energy analyzer. We call it the Sky Eye." He paused, letting the answer sink in. "It's also how they recognize one another." Chapter 265. Ethan had just come online when Rena's voice cut through the comm channel. "What, did you just log in? Sky Eye? Is that an eye?" Rena's tone brimmed with disbelief. Ethan leaned back, unfazed. "It's just a code name," he replied casually. "They aren't literal eyeballs. Sky Eyes are a product of genetic engineering among our Tiandao people. They enable the user to condense dark energy and even analyze it." "Condense dark energy?" Ethan repeated, as if mocking her shock. "Is that really possible?" Silence fell before Lina and Pan-Gen chimed in, equally stunned. Upgrading the genes of an entire population demanded astronomical amounts of biological resources, resources that even the Liang civilization couldn't muster. On ancient Tiangong, only a select few had ever received any genetic enhancements. Huaye had managed to equip millions of lower-tier fighters, but the majority of Tiangong citizens still lacked access to advanced gene technology, and those enhancements were based on the original super gene. The new super gene engine? Virtually unattainable. Had the Tiandao civilization really unlocked universal evolution? "If every Tiandao can channel dark energy," Lena whispered, "that means they all carry super genes. Even if those genes are only at a primitive stage, it's unprecedented." Pan-Gen nodded slowly, eyes glued to the data stream. The implications were staggering, an entire world of super gene carriers, each capable of manipulating one of the universe's most dangerous forces. Ethan tapped a command on his console, summoning the schematic for the Sky Eye implant. "Here," he said, "is how it works." As holographic diagrams flickered to life, Rena leaned in, her earlier skepticism dissolving into awe and excitement. In that moment, they all realized the scale of what Tiandao civilization had achieved, and how it would change the balance of power across the stars. Ethan leaned forward, eyes alight with excitement. They can compress dark energy and instantly convert it into raw kinetic force, so every soldier is, by design, a first-generation super soldier. The exceptional among them even qualify as second-generation. And then there's the Sky Eye. It can unleash concentrated dark energy as a weapon, capable of obliterating a blue star, reducing a human tank to slag, or gouging a Grand Canyon-sized fissure in solid rock. Raina exhaled slowly. Compared with the Tiandao civilization, the Liang Empire felt like a boastful landowner who thought his few bodyguards meant invincibility, never suspecting that, hidden just beyond the walls, lay hundreds of thousands of troops, scores of gods, thousands of heavenly soldiers and generals, and untold numbers of ordinary celestials trained as super warriors. Here, even the common foot soldiers were formidable fighters, third-generation super warriors in their own right. This was the kind of overwhelming power an overlord wielded in the furthest reaches of unknown space, power the Liang Empire could only dream of matching. Ethan leaned back in his chair, tapping a few commands into the holo projector. Ancient star charts and war records flickered into view. If the Celestials had never paused their military expansion, he began, even their female angels might have risen to heights we can barely imagine today. Instead, after they conquered Tianza, they were sucked into a brutal, drawn-out physical war, and the moment that ended, they were back at it. Angels versus demons, round after endless round. That perpetual cycle kept them from building the kind of economic, cultural, and technological foundations you'd expect of a true god-tier or hegemonic civilization. There's another factor, too. They reached a point where they felt they'd achieved enough. Had they pressed on, the Celestial Empire would now be teeming with hundreds of millions of lesser races, creatures and sub-angels filling the lower tiers. By comparison, the people of Liang live with a rare sense of security. Our civilization's strength gives us a genuine sense of belonging. Ray watched the data fade away, mind racing. So does that mean Liang folk and the Tiandao are fundamentally different? She glanced down at her reflection in the holoscreen. On her brow, there was no faint, iris-shaped glow, no Tongtian pattern. All Celestials bore that mark, a sign of their direct link to higher cosmic forces. Liang citizens like her had nothing of the sort. Would the Tiandao look on her people as inferior, she wondered? A chill ran through her. In a universe where celestial marking meant prestige and power, what hope did those without it have? Although it's often claimed that every super god-level civilization has already transcended its evolutionary limits, in reality such a thing is impossible, especially where children are concerned. Unless you can implant boundless knowledge at birth, young minds still have to learn and grow, and that gap remains a fundamental flaw in humanity unless it's cured at the genetic level. One step at a time, Ethan murmured. He'd recognized the problem and was determined to fix it. Panjin fell silent, equally awed by the Tiandao civilization's foundations. If the Liang people truly wanted to integrate with Tiandao, they would have to rebuild themselves entirely from the ground up. As the delegates from Liang witnessed the Tiandao's demonstrations, their jaws dropped. They learned that Tiandao citizens routinely live for centuries, and that every one of them undergoes rigorous combat training from childhood. Were all Tiandao people soldiers? Silently, Panjin and the four guardians stood by, newly ascended to the ranks of gods. At the same time, Liang's own super warriors were elevated to heavenly soldiers and generals, ready to face the monumental task of renewing their civilization. Chapter 7: Echoes of the Unknown Universe. Ethan settled into the conference hall, surrounded by fellow researchers and theologians from across the known cosmos. Conversation buzzed around him. Everyone was busy forging professional alliances and sharing the latest breakthroughs. Amid the chatter, one subject rose above all others: the fabled unknown universe, that vast expanse beyond our mapped reality. No one in the known cosmos had ever set foot there, yet rumors of its existence fueled endless speculation. Logically, one colleague remarked, you can't develop a cosmic tree network structure out there, nor construct celestial-scale supercomputers or wormhole drives. Those technologies depend on the specific laws governing our universe. But if the unknown universe is larger, potentially infinite than ours, how could any civilization traverse it? Another asked, eyebrows raised. Ethan listened, his mind racing. He had never personally ventured to the edge, what explorers called the threshold into the unknown, but he had devoured every science fiction chronicle and memoir of theoretical physics he could find. Solutions that seemed fantastical on paper often proved invaluable when faced with the impossible. When the conversation lulled, he leaned forward. We may lack empirical data, but we needn't be blind, he began. Consider this. What if we repurpose civilian-grade technology, conglomerate our best artificial intelligence frameworks, and augment them with advanced quantum simulations? It won't match the so-called Super Seminary celestial-level machines, but it could be good enough to model safe transit corridors. Murmurs of approval rippled through the room. Ethan continued. We'd feed the AI a library of quantum algorithms, entanglement protocols, multidimensional time matrices, you name it. Then integrate a self-learning core, essentially a superbrain, to refine the travel equations in real time. A theologian frowned. You speak of woo-woo quantum theories. Our super theological seminary already acknowledges quantum mechanics. Why haven't they pursued this path? Ethan smiled wryly. Because they were misled by the dark plane, no less. When the Kamigawa civilization passed through the dark currents, they brought back half-understood doctrines. Those teachings twisted the seminary's research priorities, steering them away from practical science toward mystical dead ends. He paused, letting that sink in. We can reclaim the initiative. By drawing on the best civilian research, our hybrid approach could let us chart the unknown universe safely, and maybe even reveal why its physical laws diverge so radically from ours. Across the table, the room grew silent in fascination. For the first time, the unknown didn't seem like a shadowy myth, but a challenge and an invitation. Ethan felt a surge of conviction. If they could unite the sharpest minds in both science and theology, the next great voyage might finally leave the edge of the known cosmos and blaze a trail into the mysteries beyond. Their work on quantum mechanics remained purely theoretical. No one had dared explore it in depth. Practical applications were still decades away, and besides, the Super Seminary of the Kamigawa civilization offered them a far more tempting path. With the seminary's unconditional technical support, a single successful project could elevate its patron to faction overlord, grant immortality, even propel him to godhood. Naturally, most researchers abandoned quantum mechanics and signed on with the Super Seminary. Still, some of us clung to hope. We hadn't produced a single result, but we were determined to press on until darker forces intervened. New void technologies of disturbing power emerged, swallowing resources and attention and making our quantum experiments even less feasible. That only heightened our curiosity when rumors spread that the Tiandao civilization had mastered string theory and quantum entanglement to navigate the uncharted reaches of edge space. Pan Zhen and the others pored over every fragment of information they could find, desperate for insight into interstellar travel. But the Tiandao jealously guarded their discoveries. These innovations were classified at the highest level, accessible only to one man, God King Ethan. Angel Leng, Qilin, Du Qiangwei, and the others had all been granted passage into the 9 layers of the inner sky of supreme heaven. There they beheld the awe-inspiring might of a super-god-level civilization, the Tiandao. Angel Leng was speechless. Its power exceeded every expectation. Between her own first-hand experience with Galaxy-class force and the Galaxy-tier abilities of Qilin and Du Qiangwei, they were effectively the equivalent of 3 void engines, a weapon completely unknown to the Angel civilization. Angel Leng understood the significance of the Void Engine better than most. It was that very technology that had shattered the Angel civilization's 10,000-year reign of holiness, driving it into decline and nearly toppling it under Huaye's onslaught. Thus was born the Void Era, a new epoch of cosmic warfare and technological supremacy. Back on the command deck, Ethan had been blissfully unaware of these seismic developments until his secure comlink crackled with a message from Liang Bing. I heard Liang's just been inducted into the Heavenly Tao, Liang Bing blurted, voice crackling with shock. And Angel Leng, the so-called roast chicken, actually drove Huaye, that utter scum, to retreat? Ethan frowned, rubbing his eyes. Hold on, are you coming online now? Chapter 266. No, you came at the right time. Liang Bing had no retort for Ethan's teasing that she'd only just reconnected to the network. She'd been deep in her research on Gei Xiaolun's galactic energy, convinced her demon civilization could reverse engineer it into a void engine. Progress had been encouraging. She'd barely emerged from isolation when Atuo, the sword demon, delivered 2 earth-shattering updates. First, Huaye had come within a hair's breadth of annihilating the Liang civilization. Then, Angel Leng had appeared and driven him off. To Liang Bing, Liang's reluctant submission to the Tiandao civilization was hardly surprising. But Angel Leng didn't stop at forcing a retreat. He nearly killed both Ruoning and Huaye in the process. It hit her like a bolt out of a clear sky. She'd seen Angel Leng carve through foes before, but never with such overwhelming force. Was he really that formidable? She knew all too well how dire Huaye's assault had been for Merlot Heaven. Had it not been for Ethan's ambiguous stance and He-She's inscrutable background, factors that unnerved Huaye into pulling back, Merlot Heaven might already have fallen. Even so, Huaye remains the most awe-inspiring figure in the known universe. Most God-level and aerospace civilizations have never even heard of the Tiandao civilization. All they know is that the sacred, inviolable angel civilization, 10,000 majestic angels strong, exists only because of Huaye's will. Ordinary worlds tremble at the mere mention of those angels. No one dares cry foul when they're attacked. To them, Huaye is the supreme deity of all creation. And yet, Angel Leng actually defeated him? Liang Bing snapped. Did you really power up that roast chicken? He and Angel Leng had debuted together under the duo name Icy Products, so he knew her intimately. When her genes were first analyzed, they'd seemed nothing more than ordinary angelic DNA. Everyone had assumed her genetic code was as simple as any other angel's, but now it was obvious that Angel Leng's blueprint contained something far greater. Ethan gave him a calm, almost amused look. It wasn't complicated. I integrated the Galaxy Power supergene into her system, upgraded her to a 3rd-generation divine body of heaven. Liang Bing's eyes went wide. He'd expected a minor tweak at best. Instead, his partner had been transformed into something capable of toppling the universe's mightiest god. The implications hit him like a thunderbolt. With that power coursing through her veins, Angel Leng might no longer be the roast chicken he'd always teased her for, but a force beyond reckoning. Ethan leaned back in his chair, watching Liang Bing's eyes widen with astonishment. Galactic power? She repeated, her voice tinged with disbelief. You knew about the galaxy's power? Ethan asked casually, as if discussing the weather. Is discovering it really so surprising? Liang Bing's face flushed. Of course it's surprising. The Milky Way's true power, what you call the galactic power, is the most advanced god-forging project ever devised by the Kamigawa civilization. Cracking that code is supposed to be nearly impossible. Ethan shrugged, offering her a lopsided grin. Well, I managed it. Holy. Liang Bing cut herself off, turning to Ruiz, who was studying a hollow projection of the cosmic energy matrix. Ruiz, tell him how intricate the whole operation is. He's making it sound like child's play. Ruiz folded his arms, nodding toward the drifting starfield diagram. She's not exaggerating. According to Dinghai's compendium, Gei Xiaolun's god gene sequence was both dormant and damaged, rendered invisible at the molecular level. To reactivate it, you need extremely precise conditions. He tapped a binary runic loop at the base of the projection. Take the so-called angel sequence built into the Galaxy Power framework. It can only awaken if you supply the correct fragment of sacred code. We even tried irradiating Xiaolun with high-frequency light to jolt his genetic engine into life. No luck. Ethan glanced from Ruiz to Liang Bing. And yet, here we are. Liang Bing shot him a sharp look. Don't get cocky. You've cracked only one layer. The space principle, the core regulator of the system, still eludes us. If it stays sealed, the power will collapse and take its host with it. Ethan stood, resolve hardening his features. Then we'll open it. Together. Ruiz and Liang Bing exchanged a measured nod. The starfield flickered around them, alive with promise and peril. but for the first time in centuries, the secret of the Milky Way's God-making might was within reach. Chapter 7. The Authority of Light. The people of the He civilization radiate light at wavelengths unlike anything the old Kamigawa once produced. But that difference alone cannot awaken the super gene energy. What really matters is not the wavelength itself, but the authority it carries. When infused with the sunlight authority, the galaxy power and the Nuoxing war god stir to life, and there may be other latent forces waiting to be unlocked. Ethan stood in the dim control room, turning the problem over in his mind. He'd half expected to wait for Lena's return to settle the matter, but Riz shook his head. "We can't," Riz insisted. Ethan's serial lock was damaged in the last surge. Without the full set of keys, he can't decrypt his own sequence. Across the deck, Liang Bing tapped her tablet impatiently. She still lacked the final calibration steps needed to begin her work. High above them, drifting against the blackness of space, the legendary cosmic tree truly existed, far more than a dusty myth. Built by the last Kamigawa scientists, it now powers the interstellar bridges with artificial radiation drawn from the heart of Kamigawa. That same radiation holds the secret to unlocking Ethan's full potential. But where would Liang Bing find enough of it? She knew Ethan's strength was legendary, but would even he be strong enough to channel the heart's energy, or would they all be stranded before they ever reached the next world? Ethan watched the secure channel flicker to life, revealing Queen Liang Bing's eager face. "Your Majesty, your roast chicken from Leng's pavilion holds the power of a galaxy," she gushed, voice suddenly sweet. "Bing Bing wants that power too." Ethan felt a familiar chill race through his thoughts. "You say the power of a galaxy. Pray tell, what is your identity, Your Majesty?" Liang Bing's smile turned knowing. "You must understand, Daji has walked among mortals, sowing chaos. I, as sovereign, cannot consort with a demon. I should slay you where you stand." A cold snort escaped Ethan's lips. "Is that a royal decree? Will Your Majesty herself ride to Demon Number One's lair to kill Daji?" Unfazed, Liang Bing leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. In her mind, she'd already won a bargaining chip. Why not press her advantage? Without another word, Ethan cut the feed. The channel went dark, leaving only the echo of her final, unspoken challenge. Ethan sat alone in his study, staring at the sealed petition before him. He'd known all along that this mission could only be done on his own. Still, a flicker of doubt gnawed at him. Am I, the Demon Number One, really so consumed with hating the Queen that I'd risk everything to confront her? He pounded his fist against the desk in frustration. There was no turning back. Without seizing the galaxy's power now, he'd spend years tinkering in isolation under Master Gishaolun's tutelage, and the universe wasn't waiting. Celestial politics were reaching a boiling point, and Ethan needed to grow stronger before he was caught off guard. He leapt up, stripped off his clothes, and took a bracing hot shower to clear his head. Once he was clean, he pulled on his favorite battle uniform, sleek armor tailored for both protection and speed, and fastened the reinforced leg guards that had seen him through so many skirmishes. Then he completed the formalities, an application to the Stellar High Court, a humble plea for safe passage to the Supreme Heaven. Travel to the Supreme Heaven was never simple. Its position drifted relentlessly through the cosmos, and without proper approval a traveler could be rerouted, or worse, sold to Karl, the dreaded god of death. Ethan refused to leave anything to chance. He sent his petition through the official channels and waited, heart-hammering, until the High Court's seal of approval and the new coordinates flashed back in his private console. No sooner had he committed the coordinates than the world around him blurred. A rush of starlight, and he was standing in the vast marble hall of the Supreme Heaven. Before he could steady himself, two familiar figures dashed forward, Angel Leng on his left, Du Qiangwei on his right, and each threw an arm around him in a fierce, triumphant embrace. They'd beaten him here. And in that instant, Ethan knew this journey was about to become far more complicated than he'd ever imagined. Queen Raina pressed playfully on Ethan's shoulder, her pout betraying a hint of impatience, while Qilin sat nearby, idly toying with a delicate trinket and smiling to herself. Liang Bing's eyes shot wide open. What on earth was happening? "Your Majesty," she blurted, voice trembling. "Have I misunderstood? Master Ethan didn't actually summon me just now? Did I arrive at the wrong moment? Ethan met her anxious gaze with calm assurance. Not at all. You're exactly on time. Only with his current authority could he orchestrate such a gathering. Angel Leng had already returned to her quarters. At least she hadn't raised any objections, and Du Changwei, ever straightforward and trusting, accepted every arrangement without question, her obedience absolute. Chapter 267, Anti-Void Suppression. Huaye staggered back, his chest heaving. Just moments ago he'd nearly been torn apart, and he knew why. He should never have provoked the enemy so recklessly. "Carl," he gasped. At once the god of death, Carl, stepped forward, his cloak trailing like a shadow. He placed a firm hand on Huaye's shoulder. "King Huaye, steady yourself. You can't abandon the fight now." Huaye dropped to one knee, swallowing hard. "I was overconfident. The Tiandao civilization's techniques, they're beyond anything I've ever faced. Even Ethan, my foolish apprentice, uncovered that void engine and shattered my defenses." Ruoning, standing nearby in her celestial robes, inclined her head. "I've heard rumors of this device," she said. "Your apprentice nearly overwhelmed us all." Carl nodded. "Indeed, I've studied its mechanisms using the black hole engine and Ruoning's fourth-generation divine body," he explained, glancing at the first celestial. "I never imagined encountering Tiandao tech, much less a void engine capable of snapping reality itself." Ruoning crossed her arms, thoughtful. "But if it's so dangerous, how do we counter it?" Carl's expression stayed calm, almost detached. "It isn't as unstoppable as it seems. The void engine Ethan wields is fitted with anti-void suppression circuitry. In other words, it can neutralize void energies, but that very feature also makes it vulnerable to a concentrated void backlash." Huaye blinked. "So there's a way to turn it against him?" Carl smiled faintly. "Precisely. We'll need to strike at the heart of its anti-void core. Once we do, the engine will collapse inward, and Ethan will be powerless to stop it. Her core computing power is only 10 units, nowhere near King Huaye's 60-unit black hole engine." Death God Carl's words echoed through the chamber. Huaye and Ruoning exchanged startled glances. "What?" Huaye blurted, still pinned beneath that short skirt, utterly powerless. 10 against 60? That doesn't make sense. Like I said, her void engine has an anti-void module. Without engaging anti-void, her suppression barely scratches me." Carl's eyes narrowed. "Anti-void? Are you claiming she can counter my king's void engine?" Huaye swallowed hard. "Precisely. Strictly speaking, there isn't a hard line between void and anti-void. A godly battle isn't won by raw frequency alone. It depends on engines, weapons, computing cores, algorithms, tactics, cognition, information. Every factor matters." Death God Carl stood silent for a moment, then leaned forward. "Elaborate." Huaye hesitated, his bravado faltering under the demand. Ruoning, however, remained composed and wordless. Deep down, she fully grasped what the Death God was driving at, even if she chose not to speak. Ruoning's voice crackled through the comlink. "So you're saying my dim-witted apprentice leaned entirely on his own void engine computations to keep Huaye in check?" Death God Carl floated nearby, his skeletal visage flickering with cosmic light. "Exactly," he replied, tapping into the field's data stream. "When Angel Leng activated her void engine, I ran a full diagnostic. Her engine's raw power isn't overwhelming, but she has intermediate concept rewriting protocols for matter and energy, advanced spatial definition routines, genetic structure reconfiguration, even a nascent divine body framework and an anti-void safeguard." Ruoning frowned. "All of which Huaye's black hole engine outclasses," she began. "But the black hole model needs time to lay down its void definitions. A warrior like Angel Leng can deploy her anti-void shield almost instantly." Carl nodded. "Precisely. If you let Huaye stall for a few heartbeats, Angel Leng will lock you out. That's what happened today." At that, King Huaye, still puzzled, interjected, "Next time we face that apprentice, skip the preamble. Launch void definitions at high frequency immediately. Don't give him a moment to engage his anti-void countermeasures." Ruoning sighed in relief. "Understood. From now on, we strike hard and fast. Ethan won't get the chance to bring his engine online." She leaned forward, her eyes bright with renewed confidence. "That's how we win." Ethan slammed his fist into his open palm. "So that's the plan." Huaye met his gaze, eyes serious. "Exactly. It means Angel Leng and I, whoever strikes first, wins the upper hand. The Tiandao Void Engine isn't as refined as our black hole drive, but its anti-void function is cunning. It can reverse void energy back on itself. Ethan nodded, excitement sparking in his chest. In other words, if my black hole engine fires first, it'll shut her down for good? Precisely, Huaye confirmed. Ruoning and Death God Carl exchanged a look. Carl folded his arms. But are we sure the Tiandao only have a single void engine, and just Angel Lang as their combat asset? A chill ran down Huaye's spine. Ruoning stiffened beside him as realization dawned. If the Tiandao were handing void engines out to their low-rank apprentices, they might already be mass-producing them. Ethan's voice dropped. They probably do have more void engines, but not many. Death God Carl offered a slight, knowing smile. That's exactly what I've suspected for some time. I ran Blue Star's dark plane data through every filter I have, Death God Carl announced coolly. Both Queen Qilin and Princess Du Changwei show faint void reactor signatures. In other words, they've been fitted with void engines. Huaye and Ruoning stared at him, disbelief and envy warring in their expressions. You're handing out void engines like candy? Huaye burst out. Ruoning's voice was almost a snarl. Even if we wanted one, you'd never give it to us. Carl merely arched an eyebrow. Why not? They're the most powerful devices in the known universe, and everyone's clamoring for them. The Queen of Heaven and that princess both have void engines. Do you really think the Tiandao civilization hasn't stockpiled more? Huaye scoffed. Stockpiled more? I've fought side by side with angels carrying third-generation divine bodies, and even they can't get a single void engine, not without the right connections. Ruoning folded her arms. For centuries, male angels got priority whenever angel genes were scarce. Only years later, when the policy relaxed, did women from noble or influential families begin receiving angel genes. But void engines, those have always been off limits. Carl's lips curved into something like a smirk. That's exactly why it's time we changed the rules. He turned on his heel and strode toward the door. Prepare the shipment, and notify every allied world. Void power is now in open circulation. Behind him, Huaye and Ruoning exchanged glances, half eager, half terrified. A wholesale distribution of void engines would reshape the galaxy's balance of power. Whether that prospect thrilled them or chilled them, neither dared to say aloud. Instead, they fell silently into step, following Death God Carl toward a future none of them could yet predict. The council chamber fell silent as Huaye swept his gaze across the assembled leaders. Isn't our plight with the Tiandao civilization exactly the same as theirs? He asked. The void engine is too precious to scatter widely. We can entrust it to the princess or the queen, but we must not hand it out to everyone who asks. From his throne of fading shadows, Carl, the god of death, now transformed into a perfectly rational phantom, tilted his head. Why not? Huaye hesitated. Carl's simple question was the very blade that cut through his confidence. In truth, Huaye's own rule had been built on his father's exclusive possession of the angel gene. When Huaye seized power, he deliberately unleashed that gene into the Tiangong elite, forging superhuman generals, princes, and ministers, but also erecting an unbridgeable rift between them and ordinary mortals. And if too many void engines fell into too many hands, the delicate balance would shatter altogether. Ruoning, leaning back against her chair, let out a mirthless chuckle. That, she said softly, is precisely what you never sked. Carl's ghostly eyes glowed in the faint torchlight. With a legion of void engines, no ruler can maintain control. Ethan, the king of the gods, allows dozens of third-generation deities under his authority, but he has forbidden any fourth-generation gods or void warriors. He insists on monopolizing the power to keep even his own gods in check. Huaye's expression wavered. Ruoning's lips curled into a faint, knowing smile. Your scheme was elegant, she murmured, but you forgot the most important question. Why? But even if, like you said, they only have a handful of void warriors, it's not going to be easy, Ethan muttered, his brow furrowing. He wasn't a fool. From the moment he'd heard that Liang had defected to the Tiandao civilization, he'd known that Death God Carl would order him to deal with the threat. Carl was desperate to get his hands on Liang's partner, and that other man, Pan Zhen, and Ethan was the one chosen for the task. The real problem was that Ethan didn't want to fight. Rumor had it the Tiandao had few void warriors, but who could say for certain? Now they'd struck without warning, catching him completely off guard. The mere thought of those forces dredged up memories he'd hoped were long buried, and sent his stomach tightening with dread. Chapter 268, Karl's Plan to Conquer the World. "Don't worry, Your Majesty," Karl, the god of death, said with a confident smile. "I'll install an anti-void protocol into your black hole engine." Huaye arched an eyebrow. Really? He didn't fully grasp the technical details, but anything promising to counter those dangerous void anomalies was welcome. So this is essentially a stress detection subroutine. The moment void energy is sensed, it automatically kicks in and neutralizes the threat. "Precisely," Karl replied smoothly. "Once the void signature appears, the system activates and runs the countermeasure." A gleam of anticipation lit up Huaye's eyes. "In that case, how about upgrading me to a 4th-generation divine body first? And since we still owe that favor to Liang's daughter and Pan Zhen, I'm sure you'll want me to spearhead the assault on the Tiandao civilization next." Karl remained silent for a heartbeat, his expression inscrutable. Huaye's impatience grew. "Well, aren't you going to say something?" Finally, Karl cracked a small grin. "What would you like me to say?" Huaye's scowl deepened. "Something, anything," Karl chuckled. "All right then, I'll upgrade your divine body, and I'll lead the strike against Tiandao. No more surprises." Huaye let out a relieved sigh, half exasperated, half triumphant. "Just let me know your plans next time." Karl bowed lightly. "Of course, sire. Your victory is my command." Chapter X. Karl, the death god, stood motionless, his voice eerily calm. "A 4th-generation divine vessel requires void matter," he said. "But every atom I possess is spoken for, funneled straight into the black hole engine." Huaye's expression darkened. "Then what of Ruoning?" he demanded. "How did he obtain his own 4th-generation vessel?" Karl's lips curved in a faint smile. "If I claimed there was none left, you'd have no proof to the contrary." His tone was polite, but his eyes were ice. Huaye bit back a retort. He owed his throne to Karl's power, and dared not alienate the death god. "So what's our next target?" Huaye asked instead. "Shall we strike at the Tiandao civilization?" Karl shook his head. "Not yet. Our campaign continues against the angel civilization." Huaye hesitated. "Why linger on the angels? Once we crush the Liang forces, your victories alone will terrify Tiandao into submission. Surely that would benefit us both." Karl's gaze remained unyielding, his motives inscrutable. Huaye realized that, for now, their fates were bound together. Each triumph Karl claimed only strengthened Huaye's reign, and behind every step Huaye took toward absolute power stood one imperious patron, Karl, the indomitable death god. Ethan frowned as he stared at the holo display. "We still know far too little about Tiandao, especially now that Angel Leng, Queen Qilin, and Tianfei Du Qiangwei all command void engines. It would be reckless to strike at Tiandao before we understand exactly what we're up against." Ethan's tone was level, betraying none of the impatience that burned inside him. He longed to capture the sun's light, then detonate the black hole to harvest void matter and void particles for his armies. But the Great Clock's calculations left him no choice. When it pitted Ethan, Huaye, and Tian against Slag, the heavenly Tao forces, Fierce Sun, and Blue Star, their probability of success was only 1.2%. With odds that dire, Ethan, death god of the angelic host, simply wouldn't gamble. Had their chances been better than 50-50, he would have thrown everything into the fight. But now his mind had to dwell on graver consequences. If Tiandao continued to advance unchecked, the angelic civilization might never evolve closer to the way of heaven. Confronted by Tiandao's unfathomable depth and raw power, the known universe would gain yet another all-conquering holy empire, a fate Ethan was determined to prevent. Karl, the god of death, has resolved to obliterate the angel civilization before it can ever join with the way of heaven. In his calculations, there looms a real risk that their powers could meld, and he's determined to snuff out that possibility entirely. But dealing with old Aunt Shihe won't be easy, he admitted under his breath. Huaye stroked his chin. He, too, had agreed not to move against the Tiandao civilization. When he discovered that Karl didn't expect him to challenge the way of heaven directly, he secretly breathed a sigh of relief. It was a silent confession of just how much he feared Tiandao, fear he would never own up to in public. His reluctance to strike into the fray had already skewed Karl's projections. That's because His Majesty hasn't opened his mind, Carl continued. Huaye bristled. It was one thing for Carl to note his closed heart. It was another to call out his blindness. What are you suggesting? He demanded. Carl's dark eyes glinted. King Huaye has recovered the Tiangong number 11, he said, voice low but clear. The revelation hung in the air between them. A new phase of their deadly chess game was about to begin, one in which loyalties would be tested, hidden fears exposed, and the fate of the angel civilization sealed before it could ever unite with the way of heaven. Ethan's eyes narrowed. So you held back from finishing Hexy off purely to seize the sacred knowledge repository in Kesha's arms vault? Carl, the god of death, smiled coldly. Naturally, whoever controls that repository wields the power to reshape the universe. Of course I want it. Ethan felt a flicker of hope. If that archive truly held some means to break Carl's tyranny, it might be their only chance. But Hexy would never surrender her hoard of secrets and weapons to you, he insisted. Carl chuckled softly. You'd be surprised. A low sneer curled Ruoning's lips. I see your game, Death God. You mean to exploit the angel's slaughter as leverage to coerce Hexy into giving up her vault. That will never happen. Knowing Hexy as I do, she'd sooner see the angel civilization annihilated than hand over those treasures to King Ethan. Carl shook his head, amusement dancing in his hollow eyes. You're wrong. I have. Ethan opened his mouth to argue, but the words caught in his throat as the room's shadows deepened around Carl's form. Ethan's heart skipped a beat at Carl's words. A backup plan? He asked, leaning forward. What else could they possibly have? Carl, the god of death, sat back, his pale eyes unreadable. The angel civilization never relies on a single ace. Their covert contingency is the new Angel King Yan. Ethan frowned. Angel Yan? But didn't Liang Bing already capture her? Precisely, Carl replied. That's why He-She's next move will be critical. He or she will either strike directly at you, King Ethan, or lash out at the demon civilization. In either case, to force a rescue of Angel Yan. You want me to attack the angel civilization, Ethan said slowly. Just to draw He-She out? Carl shook his head. No, it's not about waging outright war on the angels. It's about keeping He-She occupied. Ethan pressed his fingertips to his temples. Still, he mused, the angels have more tricks than we thought. Carl's lips curved in a faint smile. Do tell. Ethan stood and began pacing. Angel Yan is in Liang Bing's custody. Even if He-She approaches this as a simple rescue, we can't ignore the danger that Yan, held so close to enemy power, might be corrupted. If her mind or soul is tainted, control over the Holy Archive and the Armory could shift irrevocably. Carl nodded gravely. Then our next step is clear. We stall He-She long enough to uncover the true depth of this contingency and prevent the angel civilization's last card from turning our world upside down. Ethan sat silently as Ruoning and Huaye reviewed the unfolding crisis. There's still one more figure Aunt Hexy can call on, Ruoning said, leaning forward. Her second guardian is Fraser. Across the chamber, a spectral projection of Carl, the god of death, flickered into view. His hollow eyes bored into them as he spoke in a voice that seemed to chill the air. Angicide. Ruoning echoed the tear, in a whisper. What does that mean? Huaye's face was grim. Queen Kesha appointed Angel Yan to serve as her temporary successor. He's merely a placeholder. The archives deemed him the most capable candidate until her true heir can take the throne. Ruoning frowned. Then why not strike at Yan and force Aunt Hexy's hand? Huaye shook his head. You can't bully Hexy into submission. She only bends to kindness, never coercion. Ethan absorbed their words and felt the weight of the situation press down on him. If Carl's plan for Angicide succeeded, the entire angelic civilization would fall. He squared his shoulders. Then our only hope is to gain Fraser's loyalty and persuade Aunt Hexy to join us, he said. Without them, we'll never stand against Carl's wrath. Ruoning met Ethan's gaze and gave a slow nod. Together, they turned back to the flickering image of the death god, determination sparking in their eyes. Chapter 269. He-She Takes Action. Ethan leaned forward, studying the hollow display flickering with star charts and tactical readouts. If they sent only Angel Yan to negotiate with He-She, she would refuse outright and choose to fight to the last breath. Yet even if they used Enicid as a bargaining chip, He-She would stand her ground. She knew exactly what could be bent and what absolutely could not. Above all, She would not tolerate any infringement on the sovereignty of the angelic civilization. To her, both the reigning king of angels and his heir were expendable pawns. "What's our next move?" Ethan asked, turning to Huaye. Huaye's brow furrowed in frustration. "It's simple, really. King Huaye, my future self, already launched a full assault on the angelic civilization and unleashed those artificial black holes. So long as we keep generating more of them, the angels can never mount an effective defense." Death God Karl, seated at the opposite end of the war table, shook his head. His gaunt features were illuminated by the cold glow of the holoprojector. "Your black holes are effective," he admitted, voice low and measured, "but they're only a tactic. My goal is far grander and far more personal." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "I covet the void knowledge stored in the sacred archives. Yes, but my true purpose is to crush the way of heaven itself. Our enmity with that cosmic force is irreconcilable. There can be no truce, only total eradication." Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, envisioning the forces arrayed against them. He-She's implacable resolve, the angelic fleets converging on the black hole generators, and the looming specter of the way of heaven ready to intercede. If they pressed on, the coming battle would leave no survivors, only victors and the vanquished. He opened his eyes, determination stealing his gaze. "Very well," he said softly. "Then we strike decisively. Huaye, continue the black hole offensive. Karl, prepare your armada for full engagement, and I'll go to He-She myself, both as negotiator and, if necessary, as executioner of our will. It's time we brought this war to its end." Death God Karl moved with a decisiveness and resolve that far outstripped his original portrayal. He'd grown even more proactive. Huaye understood immediately what Karl was driving at: total annihilation of the angelic civilization. And that gave him pause. Wiping the angels from existence would net him little beyond a few captive concubines, and Huaye hungered for far more. What he truly craved was the vast store of knowledge and resources the angels had accumulated over countless generations. That hoard was the true foundation for Tiangong's rise. Noticing Huaye's hesitation, Karl spoke plainly. "My goal is to see the ancient celestial palace reborn, with male and female angels united in a thriving civilization. Only then can we challenge the will of heaven." At those words, satisfaction lit Huaye's expression. He leaned forward. "And you'll really hand me the Merlot heavenly court?" Karl inclined his head. "Yes, so long as you carry out my plan exactly as I've laid it out." "Does His Majesty want me to dispatch someone to Fraser?" Huaye asked after a rare moment of hesitation. "No," replied the death god, Karl. "Let Tao Ti handle Fraser." Karl recalled that Tao Ti's mission wasn't outright slaughter, but to capture personnel from the Holy Allen Kingdom and deliver them to the angelic civilization. With Huaye's black hole engine bearing down on Hexie's forces from the front and Tao Ti striking Fraser from behind, Hexie would be paralyzed, unable to mount any effective defense. She never expected Huaye to re-emerge so quickly. Hexie was still studying the black hole technology and scrambling for a countermeasure. The 19th defense line hadn't even been restored, yet Huaye had already returned. Something was definitely amiss. He must have abandoned his plan to seize the Tiangong One and raced back far sooner than anyone anticipated. Hexie frowned. She knew Huaye wasn't acting alone. Karl, the god of death, was the far greater threat. If Karl had devised new methods of attack, Hexie needed to anticipate them at once. She couldn't afford to be caught off guard. Fortunately, to prepare for Angel Yan's rescue, a number of veteran angels were recalled from retirement and upgraded. Ethan exhaled heavily. The old guard angel corps he'd originally assembled to capture Morgana was now being sent to face Huaye's massive Tianza legions. No matter how seasoned, the small contingent of recalled angels could never match the enemy's overwhelming numbers. Yet he had no choice. Angel Yan, the most humiliated angel king in history, had fallen into enemy hands almost immediately. If Ethan weren't the Tianji king, he wouldn't even have the authority to summon so many veterans. Before hostilities began, Huaye had publicly vowed that, should Ethan surrender, he would be treated honorably, and that the two kings could rule side by side. But Huaye had already taken the initiative. He'd unleashed a black hole, positioned 1,000 light hours beyond the 19th defense line. The singularity was voraciously devouring the surrounding asteroid belt, growing larger by the minute. Next, keep creating black holes, Ruoning instructed. Space each one 1,000 light hours apart. Huaye's tone was calm, but his question carried steel. Do you really think Ethan will surrender under these conditions? No, we still have to wait for Karl, the god of death, Ruoning said, shaking his head. He felt like a frog slowly boiling in warm water. After all these days, who knew whether she had devised a countermeasure against black holes? No one dared underestimate him. Huaye said nothing. He continued launching black holes, each one aimed squarely at the Merlot heavenly court. With that strategy, no matter what tricks she had up his sleeve, he would be swallowed by the singularities. Then, in a flash of brilliant crimson light, the first black hole Huaye had released detonated from the inside out. It collapsed without warning, contracting into a single point before vanishing entirely. What in the world? Huaye gasped, eyes widening. He had always believed his black hole engine was invincible, his mastery over singularities absolute, but now he watched in stunned disbelief as Heishi neutralized his own weapon. This isn't good. Ruoning's heart sank. They were counting on the black hole engine, and if Heishi could turn it back on them, they would be forced to face an enemy whose arsenal seemed to have no limits. Heishi didn't hesitate. The ship's space-based computing grid zeroed in on the target with pinpoint accuracy and unleashed a stellar energy strike, a colossal flare bomb of pure fusion power. In angelic warfare, judgments come in two main forms: the flaming-level Skyblade judgment, where a single angel wields a blazing sword of condensed fusion energy, and the battleship-level Skyblade judgment, which channels that same energy through a massive sword-shaped warship. Angels choose their method based on the scale and strength of their adversary. Both rely on the same source, stellar nuclear fusion, but the flaming-level attack requires a brief charging period before release. The longer an angel charges, the more devastating the strike. Conversely, a quick blast delivers less power. Third-generation angels and above may perform this judgment, but only with the express authorization of Queen Kesha or one of her 2 holy wing guards. What Heishi unleashed, however, was even more formidable than the battleship-level Skyblade judgment, an apocalyptic barrage capable of snuffing out entire suns. Within moments of the grid's final calculations, the flare bomb roared to life and hurtled toward its mark with annihilating force. Ethan's pulse hammered in his ears as dozens of miniature black holes flickered into existence around them, each one a swirling menace threatening to rip the world apart. He spun to look at Heishi, who already had his eyes fixed on a floating hollow interface, fingers dancing over its projection. According to Demon Lord Karl's bombing theory, Heishi murmured, real black holes can be destabilized by targeted explosions. These are merely simulated constructs, far less stable. If we strike before they reach full size, we can obliterate them instantly. On the display, lines of code and schematics scrolled by in rapid succession, initiating black hole strike algorithm, recalculating structural parameters, energy overflow detected, 909,000%. Heishi tapped a final command. Cascading arcs of emerald energy leapt from his gauntlet, converging on each artificial singularity. In a thunderous roar that rattled the ground beneath them, every black hole detonated, collapsing inward until there was nothing left but a faint echo of light. Strike complete. Ethan staggered forward, mouth dry. He stared at the empty space where destruction had nearly reigned supreme, and found Heishi standing calm and collected, the residual glow of his attack fading around him. That was incredible, Ethan breathed. He had planned to be the hero of the hour, rescue the woman in peril, sweep Heishi to safety, and claim the glory. But now, standing amid the aftermath of such raw power, he realized how little he understood about the dangers ahead, and how indispensable Heishi's brilliance would be. Chapter 270, Black Hole Engine and Stellar Engine. Ethan activated the holoprojector, and a turbulent vortex of shadowy energy swirled into being before the bridge crew. The women clustered at his side gasped, their arms instinctively reaching for him as they stared at the display. That old fox. She actually destroyed Huaye's black hole engine, one of them whispered in awe. Liang Bing pressed her fingertips to her temples, blinking as if trying to reorient herself in space-time. What just happened? Why do I feel disconnected from the universe's fabric? Ethan watched the simulation collapse in on itself, the embryonic singularity imploding in a silent flash. That wasn't a fully formed black hole. It was only a proto-singularity, a simulation not yet ripe. If it had matured into an actual event horizon, Heishi would have had to steer a star directly into it to disrupt its core. He tapped the console, and the swirling darkness vanished entirely. Heishi's maneuver shows a way to neutralize an unformed black hole, but make no mistake, the threat of true black hole engines remains. First, Huaye himself has ascended to genuine king-tier power. If he dares to dive into the core and trigger a black hole from within, I doubt even Heishi could stop him in time. Ethan overlaid a series of concentric spheres on the holodisplay. And remember, Heishi's successful strike occurred entirely outside Merlot Heavenly Court's defensive perimeter. Our 19th defense line spans 20 light-years, but this incident took place only a few thousand light-hours away. That gap lies beyond our real-time sensor range, dark territory where singularity-based weapons can gestate unnoticed. The officers around them exchanged solemn glances. Far beyond the command deck's gleaming steel walls, the void held countless pockets of uncharted darkness, potential incubators for the next generation stellar engines. Ethan's gaze hardened. We need countermeasures, singularity stabilizers, graviton disruptors, anything that can plug these vulnerabilities. If black hole engines have advanced to the point where Huaye can prototype them, we can't afford to lag behind. Liang Bing straightened. Understood. I'll rally the engineering teams and expedite design protocols for these defenses. Ethan nodded curtly, already mentally running through strategies and contingencies. In the cold vacuum beyond, a new arms race had been born, one in which the boundaries between survival and oblivion would be drawn on the edge of an artificial event horizon. The energy released by destroying a black hole far exceeds that of even the most powerful supernova. If such an event occurred inside Merlot Heaven's borders, Heishi would have no choice but to evacuate, and that wouldn't end the danger. Huaye could simply generate a new black hole beyond the Angel civilization's defensive perimeter, then use his upgraded 60-cycle black hole engine to force its rapid growth. In the original design, his engine lacked the power to accelerate a black hole's expansion, but this high-frequency model can drive it to critical mass in reckless haste. By the time that event horizon extends far enough to swallow the Angel Nebula, Heishi wouldn't even need to consider relocation. The entire nebula would be gone before she could mount a response. Liang Bing let out a slow breath. So Huaye remains a threat, even now? Ethan nodded gravely. A greater one than ever. We still haven't discovered any countermeasure against a functioning black hole engine. Our only hope lies in Ji Shaolin's Galaxy Force supergene. Without it, we have no defense at all. It all depends on how she handles it, Ethan said with a knowing smile. What other threats are we facing? Because they lack complete data, Liang Bing's top-level demon AI struggled to assess Huaye's remaining capabilities. Huaye's black hole engine runs at frequency 60, a high-frequency void drive, the AI reported. It's either infused with void particles or built entirely from void matter. Its core algorithm spawns a singularity, but there's no shutdown routine. Once the black hole forms, it expands unchecked until it reaches its preset size. Everything it absorbs, no matter how large, is compressed into astonishingly dense data. Ethan nodded. He knew the theoretical ceiling for void particle frequencies lay between 94 and 100, depending entirely on the algorithm's sophistication. In the original timeline, Huaye's engine had only reached frequency 48. Yet my Galaxy Power engine operates at just frequency 10, he said. So how did I manage to defeat Huaye and Ruoning with something so underpowered? Angel Leng blinked in surprise. That's the anti-void capability, also called the anti-void algorithm. It's the core of your Galaxy Power engine. Ethan paced slowly in the cavernous hangar, the low hum of dormant engines echoing around them. He turned to Angel Leng and said, "This function alone can suppress any void-based algorithm, forcing it into a paradox and triggering a logic collapse." Angel Leng watched silently, absorbing every word. Liang Bing's eyes suddenly lit up. "So you're saying the Galaxy Power engine could even stop a black hole engine from forming a black hole?" Ethan smiled indulgently. "No, it can't." Liang Bing's brow furrowed. "Why not?" Because the anti-void algorithm that neutralizes those processes wasn't part of the Galaxy Power Engine. I wrote it myself. Ethan's tone was matter-of-fact. Realization dawned on Liang Bing. Then what use is the Galaxy Power Engine on its own? None, Ethan admitted. On its own, it's outdated, has been for years. Its real potential only emerges when it's paired with a void controller. The version of my anti-void algorithm I gave Angel Leng is essentially a stripped-down void controller. Liang Bing's jaw slackened. Ethan grinned. But give me time. Before long, we'll have starships equipped with dual void drives, both black hole and stellar engines, each running my full-scale anti-void protocols. He let the words hang in the charged air, leaving his listeners to wonder how serious he really was. Ethan's power had grown so immense that he could pinch black holes and stars between his fingertips as effortlessly as one might roll a marble. From the corner of his mouth, he muttered, "Dual-core void engine?" Liang Bing's brow furrowed. She knew the Blue Star scientists had already conquered Galaxy Power, developed the German star cannon, and even launched Project Xinjiao, but a dual-core engine, let alone a dual-core void engine, was new territory. Could anyone really amass enough computational data to incinerate entire stars just to run the calculations? She cleared her throat. What exactly is a stellar engine? Rhina straightened, suddenly alert. Accustomed to being waited on, she rarely took initiative, but at the mention of stellar engine, her curiosity flared. Her instinct told her this might be the same phenomenon Ethan had demonstrated earlier when he formed a miniature star in midair. A stellar engine, she ventured, is a void engine that forges stars. Ethan gave a small knowing smile. Yes, it's a void engine that creates stars out of nothing, but that's not my question. How large can it grow? How far can its reach extend? Rhina stared at him, speechless, as the implications of his challenge rippled through the room. What scale of creation and destruction might lie ahead? A void engine that can create stars? Liang Bing's eyes widened. If such a device really existed, would it mean limitless energy? After all, a celestial-level supercomputer devours several stars for a single computation, and a grand chronometer burns through the power of hundreds of suns to reach its results in moments. The Liang civilization boasts of infinite light energy, but they can't make new stars. Every star they consume vanishes forever. In a finite universe, they'd eventually exhaust their supply. That's why the legend of the sun's sacrifice was born. To banish the void, to burn away the darkness at the cost of itself. No, to transform itself continuously, a perpetual beacon against oblivion. Ethan's tone was quiet and certain. If a black hole engine can devour, a star engine can create. I could, if I wished, double the Milky Way's star count. He shifted, brow creasing with concern. Your Majesty, you look fatigued. May I, perhaps, a leg massage? Rhina's stern posture melted into something gentler. She offered him a small, appreciative smile and inclined her head. In that brief moment, the ruler's iron will revealed a softer side, one only Ethan ever saw. Ethan leaned back, arms folded, his tone dripping with contempt. If all you're doing is bluster, demanding a stellar engine at gunpoint, then you clearly don't understand its value. Lena's jaw tightened. She'd staked everything on this meeting. Her kingdom's last hope rested on her next words. Then what does the king want? She pressed, her voice steady despite the storm of fear inside her. Ethan's expression didn't soften. He shook his head slowly. The stellar engine isn't something you hand over lightly. Chapter 271. The Choice. Your Majesty, I want the black hole engine too. Liang Bing pressed her thigh against Ethan's with bold confidence, cutting off Rhina before she could even speak. Du Changwei, Qilin, and Angel exchanged cool glances. They'd already installed their Galaxy Power engines and knew all too well how priceless the Void engine was. They refused to join this display of flattery. Ethan leaned back into the plush cushions, closed his eyes, and quietly savored the attention. Liang Bing understood that winning the black hole engine wouldn't be easy. Ethan had already told her outright that she stood no chance of receiving it. Undeterred, she pressed on. Shameless or not, she was determined to curry favor so long as there remained even a sliver of hope. Unlike Rhina, ever concerned with propriety, Liang Bing didn't care about appearances. She'd caught the faintest hint of encouragement in Ethan's expression and seized on it. After all, no flatterer lingers without some sign of reward. But Liang Bing was no ordinary suitor. She was a queen, accustomed to bending any situation to her will. Ethan leaned back as the rest of the council exchanged astonished looks. Raina shook her head, disbelief coloring her tone. "You've really got to possess some value to get away with that kind of stunt," she muttered. "After all, a goddess, or a demon queen, only pulls these brazen moves if there's profit to be had. It's never just about whims or emotions." Lena snorted. "Child's play. Demon queen, I've got an even more shameless trick up my sleeve." She turned a sly grin on Liang Bing. Liang Bing's eyes glittered with mischief as she addressed Ethan directly. "Right, Ethan? Isn't it impressive?" Ethan waved a hand dismissively. "I'll pass," he said, barely glancing at the two of them. He'd had enough of their petty one-upmanship. What truly captured his interest today was the high-stakes realm of the Six Kingdoms, where he intended to play the Grand Prime Minister. He flicked his attention back to the main display. On the holographic star chart, avatars of Huaye and Ruoning hovered over a swirling nebula. Ruoning's avatar tensed. He lacked the exalted status of a fourth-generation god, and his original plan, to delve into Merlot heaven and release an ancient singularity, had just been vetoed. With no better alternative, he authorized Huaye to unleash the colossal black hole that lay dormant in the Angel Nebula. A moment later, alarms blared across the projection. He-She's sensors had detected the phenomenon. The black hole's event horizon was expanding at an alarming rate, threatening to tear open the fabric of nearby star systems. A tense hush fell over everyone as they watched the cosmic maelstrom unfurl. Chapter 12, The Edge of Oblivion. The orbital computing arrays around the City of Angels hummed in tense unison as they processed the latest readings. A single console beeped, then announced in a grave tone, "According to the black hole algorithm, this supermassive singularity will expand to engulf the entire Angel Nebula within 30 days. A heavy silence followed. Beyond the reinforced viewports, the nebula's luminous edges had already flickered out, swallowed by the black hole's encroaching event horizon. Ruoning straightened his uniform and clasped his hands behind his back. "Carl didn't just help you install the black hole reactor, Ethan. He rewrote your genome to withstand its power. Without those genetic upgrades, not a single weapon in the City of Angels could even touch you." Huaye, once brimming with bravado, looked hollow-eyed and uncertain. "Except Kai," he whispered. Ruoning met his gaze. "Kai, the ultimate weapon in Sha's armory, is the only thing capable of injuring you. Even so, it can't destroy you outright. It can only slow you down." Huaye ran a hand through his hair, anxiety creeping into his voice. "And if she gets her hands on Sha's deepest secret weapon?" Ruoning shook his head, conviction lighting his eyes. "No one but the true King of Angels can claim that relic. She'll never lay a finger on it." Outside, the void shivered in silence, 30 days until oblivion. Inside, the City of Angels braced itself for the impossible. Ruoning leaned forward, urgency flashing in her eyes. "Even if Ethan's agents seize the armory, they won't be able to extract the weapons by conventional means. We have to use the black hole projector to strike him directly." "Again?" Huaye's voice wavered as he recalled the chaos of their last attempt. "We nearly lost half the fleet." Ruoning shook her head firmly. "We can't wait any longer. Fraser has already appealed to the Angels for aid, and the Tauti Legion is on the move." Just then, an elderly angel burst into the War Council chamber, his robes trailing dust from the corridors. He bowed deeply to Ethan, and once he dared to look up, spoke in a tense whisper. "My lord, the Tauti are advancing now." Ethan's heart pounded. Carl, the god of death, was finally making his play. Even after all these years, the mere thought of Carl's approach sent cold dread through him. From the very first campaign, Ethan had relied on automatons, decoys, and holographic projections to absorb every blow, to keep himself behind the lines and avoid real bloodshed. Facing Carl meant stepping into genuine steel and flame, something Ethan was never sure he could endure. She felt the weight of the world on her shoulders now that her husband was gone. There was no one to stand beside her, no man-in-law to share her burdens. In the original timeline, she had relied solely on herself. Angel Yan, though a fierce fighter, was hopeless at strategy and rule. But this time, things were different. A new ally had arrived, a man undefeated in any one-on-one match. Later, he revealed something astonishing. Not even he could crack Ethan's divine body. Within a full kilometer, Silver Blade, his signature weapon, couldn't even materialize beside him. That alone proved Ethan's computational and mystical power rivaled He-She's own. More than that, Ethan was literally a god of war whose prowess in battle outshone every other war god. He-She stared at the encrypted message one more time. If only she could reach Ethan directly, bring him into the command room. She needed his strength at once. No, she couldn't rely on anyone else, not even him. The fight ahead was hers alone. Hexie stayed resolute, fully aware that the price of shifting a king was astronomical and possibly beyond her ability to pay. "The situation is already critical," she said quietly. "King Hexie and Angel Yan are in grave danger. If anything happens to Fraser or to Enicid..." The ancient angel hesitated for a heartbeat, then pressed on with unwavering conviction. A civilization's bedrock is its knowledge and its patron deities, yet all three principal gods of the angelic civilization now stand under threat. Angel Yan is in the devil's grasp, and we must free her. If Liang Bing hides Yan away, it will become a centuries-long chase with no end in sight. Meanwhile, a black hole looms, poised to swallow our realm within a month. Flight alone is futile. As long as Hua Ye and Ruoning remain unresolved, Hexie and the others won't get far. And Fraser's peril is perhaps the most dire. He embodies the angel's entire future. Should any one of these three pillars crumble, the angelic civilization will truly perish. Perhaps the angelic civilization can only return once the old man is brought back to life. Ethan dwelled on this fourth and faintest glimmer of hope, that after untold centuries, the scattered sacred atoms of Holy Kesha might at last find one another and coalesce. If they did, the angelic realm would rise again. But such a reunion felt almost impossible. Who could say what changes 1,000 years, or 10,000, might wreak on the universe? Chapter 272, 100,000 Soldiers. He-She had already proven he was willing to burn the bridges. He destroyed the cauldron and sank their own ships rather than bow to Karl, the god of death's unseen threat. So when Hua Ye cried out for surrender, He-She cut him off without hesitation. "Angel civilization will not perish," he roared, his voice carrying across the battlefield. Without another word, He-She vaulted forward, charging straight into the enemy ranks. Soldiers scrambled aside as he strode past, activating high-tier weapons racks with swift precision. "He's lost his mind," Liang Bing whispered in disbelief. The He-She she'd known would never unleash every advanced weapon in their arsenal at once. From Ethan's vantage point, it was staggering. He-She's battle dolls swarmed like a living tide, and angel soldiers and warriors fell in beside him, forming an impenetrable phalanx. Then, with a single, deliberate motion, He-She summoned a storm of dark silver flying swords. Tens of thousands of blades sliced through the air, targeting General Tianza and the monstrous Tao Ti. He-She's intent was clear. He meant to kill Hua Ye in one decisive strike. It was a desperate gambit, the kind that had failed once before. Could this time be any different? The answer came with He-She's next command: "Unleash them." As the words echoed over the clash of steel and the roar of battle, the clouds overhead parted. Beneath them stood an unimaginable force, 100,000 second-generation angels, their wings gleaming with raw power. "No way! 100,000 second-generation angels?" Liang Bing's voice trembled. Even Ethan could only stare, stunned into silence. The scale of He-She's army was beyond anything they had ever witnessed, and it was about to change the tide of war forever. Even at its zenith, the angelic civilization never wielded this kind of sheer power. Second-generation angels depended on the combat skill of their supergene hosts, so not every lab-bred cherub was a powerhouse. But He-She's 100,000 angels weren't casual experiments. They were veteran archangels, both elders and juniors, personally recalled from retirement. Their battlefield discipline and experience far outstripped that of any Tianza-class winged soldier. After surviving the Celestial Palace Crusade, the Corporeal War, and the Angel Fall against the demon hordes, any angel still breathing stood among the galaxy's elite. Picture Ruoning rank warriors by the dozens, if not the hundreds, and though not all could claim the title of Wormhole Master, on equal footing they'd steamroll any comparable opponent. Summoned from the void itself, He-She's army drew on limitless resources. Ethan understood the mechanics behind He-She's ability to raise such a force, but he hadn't anticipated her sheer ruthlessness. The moment Operation Holy Kesha concluded, she threw off every restraint. For her, any tactic was acceptable so long as it secured victory, and she certainly had no intention of repeating the old script and throwing herself into a black hole. "What's that?" Liang Bing leaned forward, a knowing look in her eyes. Ethan's words had given her enough clues to figure it out. "It's exactly what it sounds like," Ethan said. "The void ability lets you redefine matter from nothing. All those precious materials you thought were rare, you can summon them at will, so long as they aren't void stable. But the void engine my king wields is even more incredible. It can redefine any substance, down to the very essence of the void itself." Ethan didn't hesitate to indulge Liang Bing. After all, that was the only way to win the Demon Queen's wholehearted loyalty. "Unlimited resources," she murmured. "Wouldn't that mean unlimited soldiers?" Raina's eyes went wide. Suddenly, she understood how the Tiandao civilization had produced so many super warriors. The emotional family had never run out of supercharged gene materials. "You could field infinite armies," she admitted, "but that power is almost meaningless." Ethan nodded. "Why do you say that?" Lena frowned in thought. "Because of the void engine," she explained. "Those endless troops would only work against opponents who don't have a void engine themselves. Anyone equipped with one could simply redefine or dispel those soldiers instantly." Just as Ethan finished, he glanced to his side and spotted Huaye standing there, watching the discussion with keen interest. King Xiao lifted his hand and unleashed a blazing orb of light. It hurtled straight into the angel ranks before erupting in a searing ring of radiance. Every angel caught in its wake froze in midair, their bodies unresponsive and drifting as if in suspended animation. What is that?" someone at the back of the field cried out. Everyone stood in stunned silence. They'd assumed Shihao's 100,000 second-generation angels would overwhelm Huaye's far larger scum forces with ease. Instead, a single mechanized combat unit had toppled those angels in an instant. Ethan walked forward, voice calm as ever. "That's the Void Engine's Angel Gene strike function. I warned you, no matter how vast your armies, they're meaningless against a civilization that wields the Void Engine. Once it scans and profiles a target's super gene structure, it can neutralize them down to the last soldier." Liang Bing stared at Ethan, bewildered. "But how can a fight end like this?" Ethan glanced back at the stunned angels. "By freely spreading your demonic genes, you just handed the Void Engine the perfect template to analyze. I suspect Huaye and King Shihao have both upgraded their void engines with a demonic gene strike module of their own." After Ethan's words rang out, Liang Bing's face went cold. She watched in horror as wave after wave of angelic warriors collapsed under the Taoti King's howl. They weren't dead, only paralyzed by the super gene engine, which the void energy was methodically dissolving. In theory, the survivors could recover. In practice, this was a battlefield, and merciless foes like the Tianza and the Taoti showed no hesitation in massacring incapacitated angels. In the midst of the slaughter, He-Shi struck. With a flick of her hand, she activated her Star Life ability, weaving multiple pocket dimensions around Taoti King Shihao to cage and smother him. No one had anticipated such an outcome, least of all Liang Bing. What they hadn't realized was that Angel's burning heart lay behind this sudden turn in He-Shi's favor. After narrowly escaping a backdoor ambush by Karl, the god of death, He-Shi had devoted herself to unraveling the mysteries of the angelic genome. From those studies, she conceived the Angel Gene Strike module and grafted it into the Taoti King's howl. This new function was a nightmare for the Void Engine. Once it scanned an opponent's genetic signature, it bypassed shields and tactics to deliver a precise, shattering blow. Within moments, Shihao's massive form was bisected by the ruthless collapse of space that He-Shi commanded. Had Huaye not dashed in at the last second, rushing forward with a whirlwind of protection spells, King Shihao would have been torn apart entirely. As the dust settled, the full horror of their weapon's potential began to sink in for everyone on the field. Ethan's voice rang out across the starlit void. "Hexy!" He drew in high-frequency void energy between his palms until it coalesced into a shimmering sphere of silvery light. With a sharp exhalation, he hurled it straight at Hexy. Hexy's lips curved into a faint sneer. In a blur of motion, her loyal battle doll swept in front of her, taking the full brunt of Ethan's blast. Metal joints spasmed as the void energy overloaded its circuits, and the automaton froze, hovering immobile against the backdrop of distant suns. Seizing the advantage, Hexie extended her hand. Dozens of Ansu silver flying swords, each gleaming blade no larger than a dagger, whirled into the air. Converging on Ethan in a deadly metallic tornado, Ethan tapped the side of his wrist console. Reconfigure the spatial matrix. At his command, the program Karl, the god of death, had redesigned flared to Lel. Ife, a golden orb of light bloomed around Ethan's form, fracturing the surrounding space into a web of micro-wormholes. Each incoming blade struck that shifting barrier and shattered, unable to penetrate the newly rewritten spatial code. Hexie's eyes flickered with surprise. In their last encounter, Ethan had been formidable, but now he wielded void energy refined to surgical precision, capable of nullifying both Xingming algorithms and Ansu Silverblade assaults. Ethan rose from his stance, the faintest grin playing on his lips. Ready to finish what we started? He drew the legendary celestial sword. As he infused it with high-frequency void energy, the ancient blade thrummed and reformed itself into a weapon forged of pure void, its edge hungry for the final clash. Last time Ethan ventured out without proper support, he suffered devastating losses and barely escaped with his life. Fortunately, the death god Karl remains as powerful as ever. Learning from his previous mistake, Ethan contacted Karl before embarking on this expedition, and Karl has solemnly promised to back him up and ensure his ultimate curtain call goes off without a hitch. Meanwhile, He-She dove into his calculations and discovered that the surrounding network of spatial wormholes has been tampered with since their last journey. Charting a new course through the altered structure will take time and precision before they can set out again. Chapter 273, He-She's Master Plan. He-She produced her own royal edict and fixed Huaye with a steely gaze. I sincerely hope you won't be put to shame again, waiting for someone else to come save you. No sooner had the words left her lips than Huaye surged forward. Zheng! Steel met steel in a blinding flash of sparks, and Huaye's blow drove He-She off balance. She staggered back, surprise flashing in her eyes. Your power, is it really so much greater than before? He-She forced a cold laugh. You'll see just how strong I've become. In truth, Huaye's sudden strength came courtesy of the death god Karl. Since the void engine refused to function, Karl had improvised a simple program to convert void energy into pure kinetic force. The upgrade was astonishing. One strike now carried the might to split continents, to part oceans, far exceeding He-She's own skill, and even overshadowing the famed no-star war god. He-She let out a snort of disbelief. You can't even open wormholes, and yet you think a black hole engine makes you unbeatable? Huaye advanced, blade ready, his confidence absolute. I don't need wormholes. All I need is this sword, and you. With that, the air crackled as they clashed once more, each determined to prove the true extent of their power. Ethan had spent years amassing a vast reservoir of dark energy, and now he unleashed it as pure kinetic force, locking blades with Huaye once more. This time, he seized the upper hand. As Huaye reeled beneath the onslaught, he sensed Ethan's nearly bottomless dark energy reserves and realized how badly he'd underestimated him. Ethan was a true king-rank powerhouse. Huaye was merely a specialist at a high king-rank level. With the fourth-generation Divine Body's dark energy drive technology, Huaye might have evened the odds, but he lacked access to that advantage. Worse still, Huaye's void suppression technique, which had crippled Ethan in their last fight, no longer had any effect. Back then, the crushing weight of the void had pinned Ethan like a doll, but after only a few exchanges now, Ethan simply furrowed his brow and shrugged it off. It was obvious he had grown stronger. Huaye could only steel himself against Ethan's relentless advance. Every time he thought he had the situation under control, Ethan exceeded his expectations. And yet, as Ethan fought on, he felt an uncomfortable echo of void pressure lingering at his core. He knew he hadn't tinkered with his fourth-generation divine body. Those transformations took far too long to master. So why, he wondered, was Huaye's suppression no longer holding him down? Ethan twisted the control dial of his portable gene engine interface and paused. Every time he adjusted one parameter, he risked destabilizing dozens of interdependent functions, especially the void suppression subroutine that she had painstakingly coded. So far, the algorithm held up, but the strain it placed on his system was unmistakable, a persistent, grinding pressure that felt as if reality itself were tearing at his bones. He was grateful this body was only she's fourth-generation divine clone, not the original. Otherwise, he doubted he could have lasted through today's trials. The battlefield around him was in chaos. On one front, Ruo Ning, stripped of the star destiny he enjoyed in the old storyline, nevertheless tore through angelic ranks with terrifying precision. On another, the gluttonous King Shi Hao had unleashed a secret gene strike against their foes, a vicious, carnivorous attack that shattered angel defenses from within. Without that sudden offensive, Ethan might already be among the fallen. Sumali, too, was carving a swath of destruction through the angel host, and everywhere he looked, Ethan recognized old enemies whose names he had once thought buried by fate. Yet in the end, only the ancient angels lay dead on this scarred plain, and even they could be resurrected. The angelic hierarchy might officially condemn such unnatural rebirth, but what would their laws matter when the entire civilization lay in ruins? With that final certainty, Ethan allowed himself a grim smile. As long as he lived, the balance of power would keep shifting in favor of those who dared to bend the rules. And right now, bending rules was exactly what he intended to do. Ethan had no choice but to split his remaining combat puppets between Sumali and Ruoning. The angel gene assault from Tao Ti King Si Hao hammered at his constructs, but between his virtually limitless dark energy reserves, a steady stellar energy feed, and overwhelming computing power, he shrugged off most of the disruption. A handful of third-generation super warrior angels joined the fray as well, though Shihao's attack had noticeably sapped their strength. As the battle dragged on, Ethan's impatience boiled over. He needed to finish this with Huaye, and fast. He maneuvered his puppets into close quarters, denying Huaye any chance to unleash his signature black hole strike. Yet no matter how tightly Ethan pressed him, Huaye held firm. Death God Carl's recent upgrades had turned him into a far tougher opponent than Ethan had anticipated. "Damn it, Carl!" Ethan roared, voice echoing across the battlefield. "Get in here! I can't keep him pinned much longer." What Ethan didn't realize was that Huaye was shouting the same thing, frantically tagging Carl for support. With wormhole transport offline and several of his heaviest hitters already down, Ethan felt the pressure mounting. But he wasn't out of tricks yet. The solar flare furnace still hummed at the ready, the dark silver chain glowed ominously at his side, and countless other weapons waited in the wings. He would unleash every one of them before he let this fight slip away. Ethan's heart lurched. He could feel the very fabric of space around them beginning to shift, the prelude to she rerunning her wormhole algorithm. If she completed that recalculation, there'd be no stopping whatever devastation she had planned. "Something big is coming," he warned, his eyes flicking between his allies. Liang Bing spun toward him. "What do you mean?" she demanded. It'd been ages since she had mustered the power to truly threaten Huaye, and Ethan's sudden alarm left her bewildered. "I never expected her to do whatever this is. But okay, I'm listening." Ethan said nothing more. In the next instant, a searing beam of light tore through the gloom and struck Heishi and Huaye as they squared off. The air crackled with raw energy. Heishi's fourth-generation divine body combat doll erupted into molten fragments and dissolved mid-air. Huaye wasn't spared either. His form gave way instantly, his body crumpling until only his severed head rolled to a stop on the cracked stone. Liang Bing staggered backward, horror and recognition washing over her. "That isn't just a flare bombardment. It's the Skyblade's great judgment," she gasped. She'd seen Angel Yan attempt that exact technique on Blue Star, an overwhelmingly concentrated flare capable of liquefying divine flesh in an instant. When the light finally dimmed, Huaye lay motionless, dismembered, a grim testament to the unstoppable force Ethan had sensed all along. Because he was a divine body, Ethan didn't die. But Huaye was already trembling with terror. He had never imagined Ethan would go this far. As he watched Ethan's form knit itself back together, Huaye finally understood why Ethan dared such an assault. A fourth-generation divine being could reassemble its atoms at will. No attack could truly destroy his sacred core. At worst, he'd lose some energy, but true death was impossible. This is cheating. Huaye managed to gasp. He felt his own divine form begin to recover, too, but he'd poured out so much power that a full restoration was hopeless. Before long, he would collapse from sheer exhaustion. Huaye. Ruoning's voice cracked with panic. She'd never anticipated Ethan's ruthlessness. Her greatest fear was that she, too, would be torn apart. King! Sumali abandoned the 3 third-generation High Angels who lay crippled by Ethan's previous onslaught. With a desperate flap of his wing, he turned back, intent on rescuing Huaye. But it was already over. Ethan withdrew his hand from Ruoning's grip. With a subtle motion, he bound both her and Sumali in shimmering celestial shackles. Then he lifted the king's command talisman, its runes flaring red in his palm. The space before them warped. The air rippled like disturbed water. From the distortion, a colossal skull materialized, its empty eye sockets burning with the talisman's crimson light. Huaye, Ruoning, and Sumali stood frozen, gazing up at the terrible specter. Whatever fate awaited them, it would be delivered by Ethan's unstoppable power and the king's irrevocable command. She had been saved by that skull once before, so this time she was prepared. Yet the bone-white relic staring back at her wasn't the same crimson-tinged skull she'd known. It had darkened into a deep purple-black, radiating an unsettling aura of emptiness. Chapter 274, Ethan's Astounding Insight. Ethan hovered before the floating, purple-black skull of the legendary Grim Reaper Carl, determination burning in his eyes. He'd planned to immobilize the skull with an ice elemental spell, then seal it in a containment field to study its eerie properties. Confident he'd perfected the algorithm since last time, he initiated the analysis. On his wrist display, diagnostic lines churned, constructing attack algorithm for skull structure. Analysis failed. Target contains large amounts of unknown substances and elements. Reanalyzing 0.0%. Analysis failed. Spatial data unstable. IOMR no 1%. Ethan's pupils narrowed. He'd adjusted every parameter, elemental density, molecular vibration frequency, resonance harmonics, yet the skull shrugged off each attempt. As if in response, the air around it quivered, warping reality into rippling pockets of distortion. Desperate, Ethan commanded another scan. Redefined space-time matrix. Analyzing core structure. Analysis failed. Target continues to resist. The display blinked red before shutting off entirely. In that instant, the skull's jaw unfurled like a deadly trap. Inhuman speed propelled it forward, and its serrated teeth snapped shut around Ethan. Cold darkness swallowed him. He found himself pinned, unable to move, but far from fearing defeat. Ethan drew in a steadying breath. He knew exactly what his body and magic could endure. Gathering every ounce of willpower, he began to tap into the strength he'd always trusted, but never had to fully unleash. It wasn't easy to force her to move. She fought back every step of the way. Dark energy swirled outward in a vast cloud, scrambling our calculations, corrupting every analytic protocol, and throwing all interference measures into disarray. But this was only a 4th-generation divine clone. The real he-she still lay hidden within the Angel Nebula. To anyone watching, it might look as though she'd made a desperate retreat, but in truth her true form hadn't surfaced at all. He-she had calculated every risk. If Death God Carl suddenly fixed his wrath on her, she needed time to study his tactics and develop a counterstrike. She wasn't as formidable in direct combat as the holy warrior Kesha, but she more than compensated with cunning. Her plan had been simple. Send the clone into the mines first, let it trip every trap, probe every routine, and test every weapon, then move in herself once the field was mapped. Now that her doppelganger had vanished, swallowed whole by that gigantic skeletal beast, all communication was cut off. She didn't yet know her clone's fate, but she refused to panic. After all, if Death God Carl really intended to destroy a mere 4th-generation vessel, he'd likely obliterate this combat doll in a single supernova blast, hardly worth his full attention. There's no need to worry about that. Ethan studied the cosmic tree probe readout. It showed no sign of an impending supernova in any nearby stars. And without aid from the Liang civilization, the Death God Carl couldn't force a supernova to annihilate her divine form. At worst, she might be hurled into the black hole, but that too would be contained. The king-level energy Huaye had poured into it would neutralize any threat. Was he captured by Carl that easily? Huaye glanced over at Liang Bing and the others, concern etched on his face. Ruoning hurried to Huaye's side. Huaye, are you all right? She reached out, noticing how unnaturally elongated his neck had become. How are you feeling? I'm stabilizing, but I'm running low on energy, Huaye admitted. He looked at Ruoning with determined eyes. It's done. Carl has already taken care of He. Next, we turn our sights to the angel civilization. We'll claim all the energy reserves we need, and then we'll go after Liang Bing to retrieve Angel Yan, along with the Sacred Knowledge Vault and its armory. Ruoning's face lit up with excitement, just as a sword blade suddenly burst through her chest. T's tip slowly sliding out of her back. Ah! Ruoning's gasp cut through the chamber as she realized the sword at her throat was real. She froze, eyes wide. Beside her, Huaye went pale. Your Majesty. Sumali's cold smile widened. She had slowed only to toy with them. Now her blade whirled faster than ever. I'm afraid your beautiful dreams end here. At that moment, He strode forward, the king's sealed decree clutched in her hand. By order of His Majesty, stand down. Another He. Ruoning and Huaye exchanged desperate looks. Could Carl, the god of death, really have stolen away her body double and sent this one in her place? Damn it, Your Highness, Liang Bing muttered, a rush of relief washing over her. She'd been certain He was lost to Carl's realm, trapped or worse. Instead, here she stood, alive, defiant, and bearing the king's mandate. Liang Bing's heart swelled with pride. Enemies though they were now, He had outmaneuvered them all. Even the threat to imprison her in a bottle once seemed unforgivable, but compared to the cruelty of her own sister, it felt trivial. From the back of the hall, Ethan watched He with grudging respect. So cunning, so unflinching, exactly the resolve an old Yinji needed to claim the final victory. Ethan had no choice but to gamble, and yet, paradoxically, he couldn't afford a single mistake. The entire angelic civilization teetered on the brink of annihilation. One misstep now would plunge the world into darkness. Every decision had to be measured, every action executed with flawless precision. And yet, faced with an impossible stalemate, Ethan resolved to stake everything on the one move he believed could save them all, himself. On the surface, his plan looked reckless. He would strike first, capture the king, and lure every angel away from mellow heaven into a do-or-die clash with Huaye. To every onlooker, Ethan was throwing his forces into the fire, sacrificing angels by the dozens, all to buy him a single chance at victory. But that was precisely the illusion he needed. Unbeknownst to friend and foe alike, Ethan himself never left mellow heaven. While his angelic army marched off to meet Huaye on the plain, he remained hidden in the heart of their stronghold. He endured the burden of every fallen warrior, orchestrating what he called the Burn Together operation, a ruse so complete that no one doubted its sincerity. Everyone believed Ethan's courage was fueled by the fabled fourth-generation divine body, a power said to be the last hope of an angel king. In truth, the vessel they called the fourth-generation divine body was nothing more than a combat puppet, a clone designed to draw attention and absorb the Kingslayer's focus. This was where Ethan had concealed his greatest advantage, an immense cache of dark energy, a reserve so potent that only a true sovereign could command it. Who would suspect that the dark energy they thought exclusive to kings was neither discovered nor inherited? They saw a clone. They saw a puppet king. They didn't know they'd been deceived by the most astounding gamble in angelic history, one that would decide the fate of their world. In an instant, Carl, the god of death, struck decisively at He. Huaye and Ruoning exhaled in relief. Without their leader, He's clones on the battlefield fell apart, their power draining away. No one noticed that the real He had already slipped onto the field, launching a surprise attack in blatant violation of martial honor. He, what are you doing? Ruoning gasped as she felt a cold hand clamp down on her shoulder. Her heart pounded. How could He dare ambush her like this? And why target her first? Unbeknownst to the others, Ruoning was the Tianza Legion's only true strategist, and therefore He's greatest threat. Without her tactical brilliance, the remnants of the Tianzhu forces would crumble before the angel civilization. That was why He and his ally Kesha had systematically purged every shrewd mind in their path. He's lips curved into a cruel smile as he pressed his cheek against Ruoning's ear. "Ruoning, it's time you bowed," he murmured. "I am a fourth-generation divine body. You can't harm me." Ruoning struggled, fury blazing in her eyes. "I'm a fourth-generation divine body too," she spat, wrenching at his hold. But Hishi's grip was iron. She could not break free. All around them, the battlefield fell silent. Even as the dying clones of Hishi collapsed, the duel of wills between Ruoning and the man who had once been her foe, and now her captor, was only just beginning. Not even divine-slaying weapons like the Wang Ming or the Ansu Yinwu can destroy her utterly. Her atoms simply recombine on their own. Chapter 275, Death. Carl comes and leaves. "No, I can handle this," she said in a flat, controlled voice. Around her, translucent data streams twisted through the air like living serpents. In an instant, the system began dissecting Ruoning's very essence, line by line, loading fourth-generation female angel genotype, integrating Stick's variant divine body framework, deploying atomic-level assault algorithm, importing Ruoning's divine body decomposition protocol, initializing dark energy molecular disassembler, executing decomposition sequence. A cold tide of dark energy surged into Ruoning's body. She gasped, eyes widening in horror. Void engine! The realization hit her like a dagger. Hishi's biological engine was rewriting her at the cellular level. "You hypocrite! Sumali, save me!" Ruoning thrashed, but the invisible field shredded her defenses as if they were paper. Violet sparks danced across her skin, and she cried out in agony. Sumali leapt forward, aura flaring, but her strike dissolved harmlessly against the disassembly barrier. Ruoning's screams echoed through the chamber as the dark energy continued its relentless work. Long Bing, standing just out of reach, turned to Ethan. "What frequency is Hishi's void engine operating at?" Ethan's eyes narrowed as he ran a quick simulation in his mind. About 11.87 terahertz, just above standard dark matter resonance. It's synced to her divine body sequencer. There's no direct countermeasure. Liang Bing's face drained of color. "Then how do we stop it?" Ethan squared his shoulders. "We force a feedback overload. Sumali, can you channel your aura through my gauntlet?" Sumali nodded, fists clenching as metal plates snapped into place around her wrist. "If I divert my energy, it could disrupt the sequence long enough to break her hold." Hishi's expression didn't change, but the faint glow beneath her eyes flared brighter. "You're welcome to try." Ethan gave the signal. Now! A keening pulse of violet light burst from Sumali's gauntlet, arcing across the chamber in a wave of raw energy. The disassembly beam wavered, its high-pitched hum climbing into a shriek. Ruoning shuddered violently as molecular bonds crackled and reformed. With one final, agonized cry, the dark interface collapsed. Ruoning's body went limp, but the hold was broken. Hishi staggered back, her gauntlet sparks flickering, a cold smile curving her lips. "Not bad," she murmured, "but this is far from over." Ethan stepped forward, voice low but unwavering. "We'll see about that." Behind them, the shadows shifted. Carl had arrived, seen the wreckage, and vanished again before anyone could turn. A faint echo in the chamber was all that remained of his passing. Ethan's voice stayed steady. Angel Civilization's secondary bioengines are notoriously small. After all, they have to stay hidden. The void drive on Hexi's weapon looks even more temporary. It barely uses void matter, probably doesn't even operate at 10 frequencies. It's far inferior to the Tauti. Wang Shihao, you can do better than this. Angel Leng stared at him in stunned silence. To her, a secondary bioengine and a void drive were essentially the same thing. It was unthinkable that Hishi, the king of secrets, had suddenly cracked open entirely new research and produced such a device in the few days since his coronation. There was only one plausible explanation. Angel Civilization must have been developing void drive technology in secret for a long time. But that made no sense. From the moment Carl, the death god, introduced his void theory, the angels had denounced it as heresy. They forbade any study of void matter under penalty of death. Angel Leng herself considered void theory a mortal threat to their entire race, something to be suppressed and destroyed. Yet here it was, in plain sight, grafted onto Hexi's weapon. Angel Leng felt her mind racing. If the void engine was real, and evidently functional, why had the Council concealed its existence? What catastrophe were they preparing for Ep within the wings of heaven? She met Ethan's calm, unflinching gaze. "Explain," she demanded. How they could betray our most sacred taboo. Ethan could hardly believe it. The angel civilization had already risen to the cutting edge of every known culture in the universe, and they'd even installed a functioning void engine. The revelation shook Angel Yan's faith to its core. Still, Ethan pressed on. Hexy may have obtained a fragment of the black hole engine's void algorithm. If that's true, then even a low-frequency void engine, powered by a top-tier algorithm, could match or even outclass Angel Leng's void engine. He paused, gathering his thoughts. You have to understand, between the void algorithm and the void engine, the algorithm is the true prize. It's the blueprint. No matter how much void matter or how many void particles you collect, you can't make them work without understanding the underlying code. Death God Karl has devoted years to studying the void. His algorithms are leagues ahead of anything the angels have developed. Even if the angel civilization runs its own covert research, it can't compare to Karl's relentless calculations, powered by that massive chrono device of his. At best, Holy Kesha is only laying preliminary groundwork. She relied solely on his personal orbital computing array. He had no access to the vast archives of the sacred knowledge treasury. Liang Bing's envy flared into irritation as she watched him remain cloistered and distant. If you can't use the official channels, she snapped, why lock yourself away at all? Why all the secrecy? Sumali knew how vital Ruoning was to their plan, so she charged forward, determined to rescue her. But with a casual gesture from Heishi, the celestial enforcer Starlife thundered into being. Its roar split the heavens, and in a single, merciless sweep, it cut Sumali cleanly in two. Because they had been denied the void particles the original story would have supplied, Death God Karl refused to elevate Sumali and her companions into the four Knights of the Void. In her third-generation divine body, Sumali was far too fragile to withstand Starlife's power. She was obliterated without mercy. To Heishi, Sumali was nothing more than an anonymous beauty manipulator, a role so trivial that he'd already forgotten her. After beholding Ethan's divine king presence and incomparable aura, who could possibly remember Sumali? Better to erase her without hesitation, he decided, than invite further misunderstanding. No one can save you, Ruoning. Ethan's voice rang out, cold and unyielding. In an instant, Ruoning's form unraveled, the dark data that sustained him disintegrating at Ethan's command. No, Ethan! Ruoning screamed, panic lacing his voice. Let me go. His cries came too late. Ethan stood unwavering, arms folded. Why didn't you beg sooner? Why wait until the final moment? Ruoning trembled, voice faltering. It's too late. It's too late. Ethan's eyes flickered with regret. If Ruoning had pleaded earlier, perhaps he might have shown mercy, but mercy was now out of reach. Nearby, King Huaye pressed his forehead to the ground, crawling desperately across the chamber floor. Only someone as cunning as he would find a way to escape such dire circumstances. Yet when Ethan snapped his fingers, the air around Huaye ignited with the searing glow of the solar flare furnace. Ethan, I surrender! I yield to you! Huaye cried, his soul recoiling from the furnace's heat. I spared you once, Ethan said steadily, but I will not do so again. He shook his head. His Royal Highness King Tianji always has one more trick up his sleeve. Suddenly, a new voice echoed in the hall. Ethan looked up without surprise. Karl, you finally emerged from Death Song Academy. Karl stepped into the light, expression calm. Ethan met his gaze, voice low and steady. Karl, save me! Huaye's cry rang out as he fell to his knees before Karl, the death god himself, as though the very avatar of doom were his last hope. You've got it all wrong, Your Highness King, Tianji. Karl, expression unreadable, inclined his head in a curt bow to Ethan. I assure you, I'm here only to reclaim my research. Ethan's eyes narrowed. You want my black hole engine, is that it? With a gesture, he activated Wang Ming's auxiliary bioengine. Time was bleeding away, and Ethan needed every second to finish installing the emergency drive and channel all the stored void matter into forging a weapon of pure null energy. Not long ago, when he dissected Huaye's prototype, Ethan recovered several advanced void field algorithms. Coupled with decades of his own studies, he was more than a match for even a death god on academic pilgrimage. This was the pinnacle of void science exchange, if only Karl had intended to negotiate rather than simply confiscate. As Ethan's fingers danced over the control array, a lattice of crackling energy coalesced around Wang Ming. He braced himself, projecting a shimmering void barrier that hummed with potential. Carl's phantom silhouette flickered, then dissolved like smoke in sunlight. "No!" Huaye screamed, reaching out in terror. In an instant, a gout of blinding solar flare surged from the newly awakened furnace core, consuming him utterly. His final agonized shriek echoed through the empty void, and then silence. Ethan exhaled, his face set in determination. The black hole engine was safe, and with it, the promise of a weapon that might one day tip the balance in humanity's favor. But for now, there was only the endless expanse, and the knowledge that true power in the void was never given, only taken. Damn it! She pounded her fist against the console. She never expected Death God Carl to reclaim the black hole engine so quickly, or to be so indifferent to Huaye's fate. Her threat to roast Huaye in the solar flare furnace was meant only to force Carl to divert extra computing power. Instead, he executed his recovery protocol with brutal efficiency, retrieved the engine, and slipped away before she could stop him. Now one of her fourth-generation god clones was lost. The gargantuan black hole beyond the Angel Nebula kept growing, and she knew the Sky Scum army would return. Helpless rage burned in her veins as she stared at the empty display where the engine had been. Chapter 276, She's Desperate Gambit. Ethan had one overriding reason for keeping Carl, the god of death, at his side. Carl's very existence was the leverage he needed to bend the angelic civilization to his will. Without that looming threat, she would have taken her time, tens of millions of years, to consider his overtures. But Carl's relentless pressure, his dark influence closing in at every turn, drove the angels into crisis. Only in the crucible of extinction would she be willing to acknowledge Ethan's kindness and seek his help. Ethan knew exactly what he was doing. He had constructed his reputation carefully, playing the benevolent ally, until the moment the angels had no choice but to come to him. She, brilliant and proud, would not seek him out as long as she believed she held the upper hand. But once her civilization teetered on the brink of annihilation, she would be forced into his arms, and he would claim the alliance he desired. She stared through the observation portal of the Angel Nebula at the yawning black hole spiraling in space. Even as she worked to marshal her forces, reports came in from Fraser's sector. The Tauti Legion had poured through the rift and was slaughtering mortal defenders at every outpost. Casualties were staggering. In the south, the realm of Manzi was already broken, its cities laid waste first by Liang Bing's demonic plague, and now overrun a second time by the ravenous Tauti horde. Angel Yan had thrown himself into the fight, his divine might wiping out the lesser demons in a single sweeping assault. But that victory only freed the field for the Tauti to surge in greater numbers than ever before. With the angelic fleet stretched thin and panic spreading among the ranks, she realized the truth of Ethan's design. Only by turning to him, by accepting Carl's terms, could she hope to save her people from total oblivion. This was no random crisis, she saw. It was a calculated move, a conspiracy of cosmic proportions, one that left she with a single, agonizing choice. In the face of annihilation, she would have to swallow her pride and beg the man she once scorned for salvation. Inasid had already glimpsed Tauti, and her growth had been irrevocably disrupted. Whether she could still ascend as the future King of Angels was anyone's guess. "King Ethan, what do we do?" Angel Sui asked, her voice tight with uncertainty. She'd served Ethan since the Battle of the Wrath Sea, so he was not only her lord, but her sovereign. Unlike Queen Kesha's former followers, who styled her Your Highness, Sui and the others simply called him King. Ethan paused, gathering his thoughts. "We have only two options. First, we could go after Angel Yan. She alone controls the Vault of Sacred Knowledge and the Armory. No one else can unlock its secrets or wield its weapons. Even if she doesn't match Queen Kesha's prowess, she is still far stronger than I am." He let the words hang in the air, then continued. "The second option is to rescue Inasid, but she's not yet ready to inherit the vault. If we choose her, we'll have to stay behind to defend Fraser, possibly for years, until she is old enough. Only then could we hope to see a new King of Angels rise." Angel Sui and the angel standing beside her, Angel Ying, exchanged anxious glances. Either choice spelled danger. Neither offered an easy way forward. "King Ethan, what's wrong?" the venerable Archangel Kesha began, voice tight with concern. "I can't," Ethan replied bluntly. He already knew what Kesha was about to suggest, granting him direct authority over the Sacred Knowledge Vault and the Weapons Depot, streamlining the defense of the Angel Nebula. But the thought of such crushing responsibility made his chest tighten. He felt in no position to lead every angel in this crisis. A flicker of relief passed through him as he finished his refusal. At least now, he didn't have to bear the weight of everything alone. "The Angel Nebula cannot hold out," Ethan continued, leaning forward. "By the time we develop an algorithm to neutralize the black Kryptonian, it will already have engulfed the entire system." Archangel Kesha fell silent, studying his grandnephew-in-law's resolute features. After a long moment he nodded. The decision was inevitable. "Very well," Ethan said, his voice steady. "Issue the order. We evacuate the Angel Nebula immediately." Ethan pictured the vast fleets of winged warriors they had once been, magnificent, confident masters of their domain. Now, facing the inexorable pull of a collapsing star, their civilization was weaker than it had been, even when Queen Angel Yan led her followers on a last stand in the Fraser cluster. Behind her, she had left a fortune of Ansu silver mines, but those riches lay beyond reach now. And Fraser itself offered no safe harbor. The returning Tianza Legion would sweep through the cluster without mercy. To attempt a reoccupation would be tantamount to marching into slaughter. "No," Ethan said, more to himself than to Kesha. "Our only hope is to rescue Queen Angel Yan, and with her, the spark of our people's survival." He straightened, resolve hardening his features. "Prepare the evacuation vessels. We depart for Queen Angel Yan's coordinates. There is no turning back." Of the 100,000 second-generation angels unleashed by the explosion, 50,000 were obliterated by the Tao Te King's void engine. Had that devastating weapon not existed, the sacrifice of those 50,000 valiant sisters would have claimed at least 100,000 of the enemy's abominations. Now a fierce debate raged among the Angelic Council, but Hexie stood immovable at its center. "Resurrection bears a shameful stigma," she told Ethan and the assembled elders. "Let me bear that shame alone. What we need is power, the power to guarantee our immortality and to see justice prevail." Unbeknownst to the senior angels, Hexie had already set her heart on restoring the souls of the fallen. Though the elders had never formally advocated for resurrection, they had never condemned the possibility either. The second generation, however, reacted with revulsion. They insisted that tampering with life and death was an abomination against the natural order. Hexie's plan was simple, one final attempt to reclaim Angel Yan from Morgana's grasp. If she failed, she would abandon the cause forever. Wariness pulled at her resolve, but she refused to let Ethan, or anyone, underestimate the true might of the angelic civilization. Driven by unyielding pride and a steadfast will, Hexie steeled herself for the decisive struggle to come. In the silent war council aboard the Celestial Spire, God King Ethan weighed the stakes with a cold, brilliant clarity. If this campaign succeeded, the angel civilization would preserve its hard-won sovereignty, no surrender required, no forfeiture of independence. And if it failed, even then, the clash would showcase the angels' strategic value and military might to the vast Tiandao civilization. At worst, they might have to bow to Tiandao's demands, but they would never endure the fate of Liang, total subjugation and the erasure of every vestige of autonomy. Angels were born free. Their very nature demanded it. Ethan's superintellect needed no celestial mainframe to decipher the implications. Word had come that General He-Shi's angelic legions had already penetrated deep into the Milky Way. From that single fact, Ethan knew exactly what He-Shi intended, a final, all-or-nothing gambit. "So this is your last stand," he murmured to himself, "the edge of the precipice." He-Shi's plan was audacious but precise. Strike first at the demon civilization's stronghold, rescue Angel Yan before Huaye could be resurrected, and thwart the Tianza army's regrouping. Only by acting now could the angels secure the freedom to maneuver, press forward when victory beckoned, or withdraw under cover of darkness if the tide turned. And once that gamble had paid off, they could decide whether to rally to Fraser's rescue or to seek out new worlds in which to rebuild their shattered civilization. Either way, angels would remain sovereign. Their win, Geas, and their will would carry them beyond any empire's grasp. He-Shi arrived with angels, Liang Bing stared in disbelief. If her demon general Ethan hadn't been so formidable, she'd likely have been trampled before she could even react. Only yesterday, after the Six Kingdoms grand ceremony naming her prime minister, she'd returned to Ethan's side and succumbed to a deep sleep. Now, upon waking, she ran her senses over her fourth-generation divine body and froze. The damage read as 12%. 12%. For a body famed for rapid self-repair, that implied the original wounds might once have been closer to 30%. Liang Bing whirled, eyes blazing with fury. "Ethan, you uncaring brute! You didn't even warn your queen to fall back." Her voice trembled as she berated him for his coldness, devouring every danger in his path without so much as a heads-up. Yet beneath her anger flickered a question. Was this his way of protecting her? By holding his tongue, had he kept her safe after all? Liang Bing shook his head. Ethan was all sharp tongue and hidden warmth. He'd almost certainly fallen in love with the queen. He just wouldn't admit it. "Your Majesty, are we about to leave the Milky Way?" Geshaolin asked, stepping forward. Gone was the full demon's guise he'd once worn. Now, aside from the sleek, ebony wings unfurling from his back, his skin carried no hint of otherworldly color. He looked almost human. Chapter 277, The Angel Army Halts. A ribbon of starlight curved across the void, and then, one by one, the engines of He-Shi's fleet ignited. On the bridge of the vanguard, Liang Bingmi folded her arms, her voice steady. "No need to hurry. Let's assess the situation first. He-Shi won't find us that easily." Yet as she spoke, her eyes drilled into the tactical display. It showed every Skyblade battleship and orbital dreadnought in formation, an entire space fleet she'd thought was out of commission. He-Shi actually deployed every single space-based battleship? Liang Bingmi muttered under her breath. It defied reason. He-Shi's forces had just suffered a devastating setback defending the Angel Nebula. Their reserves were all but spent. Standing beside her, Ethan scanned the readouts, brow furrowed. Liang Bingmi forced herself to smile. She didn't want him leaping to conclusions. Misreading this maneuver as an outright assault could spark a chain reaction neither side could control. "It's a show of force," she said more to herself than to him. "Psychological warfare. If she risks this many ships just to intimidate us, it's desperation, not victory." But even as she spoke, unease crept in. This wasn't how events were supposed to unfold. In the original timeline, Angel Yan had been compelled to scuttle and even destroy the bulk of her Skyblade fleet, limping away in disgrace. And 2 millennia ago, Kesha, Shi's predecessor, had committed so many angels to the Battle of Morgana that she ignited the Fourth Nebula War between angels and demons. Haunted by that calamity, she'd since confined her expeditionary force to a single escort of 14 angels. Now she had thrown caution, and perhaps history, to the wind, marshalling her entire armada for a daring advance on the Milky Way. It was a gambit destined to decide the fate of the Angel Nebula and perhaps the wider galaxy. Ethan's jaw tightened. "She's asking for trouble." Liang Bingmi nodded, her gaze firm. "Then let's make sure we're ready when it comes." Above them, the black sea of stars held its breath. The angel army had halted, but the real battle was only just beginning. After the war, Archangel Kesha came to a stark realization. Future conflicts could not be fought the same way. Dragging every corner of the universe into a demon war was simply too destructive. Determined to prevent another cataclysm, she shifted tactics, keeping her operations as covert as possible and sending only her personal guard to Earth under the leadership of Ethan, formerly known as Luther. At the same time, Kesha noted a troubling trend among the angels. Aside from a handful of hardened veterans, most of the new era female angels were growing weaker by the day. Many had never seen real combat. Throughout their formative years, they'd been sheltered, assigned to mining duties, archive work, and other minor tasks, protected by Kesha's overwhelming power and guided by the angelic elite. When the war finally broke out, they bloomed like delicate greenhouse flowers, beautiful but utterly untested on the battlefield. "Your Highness Kesha," spoke one impatient officer, "could we not unleash the Skyblade battle fleet in full? With King Tianji's aid, we could meet Huaye's armada outside the Angel Nebula and annihilate them outright." Another angel frowned. "In principle, striking hard and fast is appealing. I don't oppose defeating our enemies, but have you considered the wider consequences? A full-scale assault might plunge the entire galaxy into renewed war, devastating countless innocent worlds. Is that truly the path we wish to choose? Space jumps for large warships demand extensive recharge time, far more than an hour or two. If Huaye grows desperate and recklessly fires up the black hole engine in a do-or-die gambit, our Tianji and Skyblade battle groups would stand no chance. Even the space-class fleet would be wiped out alongside them. Ethan listened carefully, aware that they might have to crush the Angel's resistance by force if negotiations failed. He continued, the Tianji and Skyblade vessels are built like fortresses, reinforced hulls, multi-layered shields. Even a black hole engine can't punch through that, unless Huaye is willing to sacrifice his own fleet in a mutual annihilation. A female angel gasped in shock. Without another word, Ethan activated the holoprojector and displayed the footage of the black hole engine. None of the angels who hadn't witnessed it firsthand could have imagined its destructive power. They watched in stunned silence as the swirling event horizon formed, a raw, inescapable void that threatened to consume everything in its path. The room fell deathly quiet. Even the largest Tianji and space-class ships, massive in scale yet surprisingly agile, were dwarfed by the scale of such an engine. It was clear now, if Huaye chose to go down with his fleet, no defenses in the galaxy could stop him. Ethan's voice came through the comm with quiet authority. Our cruisers are capable of speeds that would instantly outpace, even obliterate, the warships of the most advanced civilizations in known space. We have few equals in the universe, but our current adversary isn't another fleet. It's a ravenous black hole. Its gravity is so intense that not even light can escape. No matter how advanced our angelic civilization's colossal battle carriers are, they remain bound by the cosmic speed limit. Not even third or fourth generation archangels could flap their wings fast enough to break free from an event horizon, much less our massive ships. The only conceivable escape would be a full long-range hyperspace jump, vaulting us completely beyond the black hole's grasp. Yet, as Elder He-Si reminded us, a vessel that size cannot charge its jump drive instantaneously. By the time it's ready, the black hole will have dragged us past the point of no return. In short, our current technology offers no way to combat a black hole. The age of the Angel Nebula has come to an end. For security reasons, Merlot's heavenly court must relocate, declared High Priestess He-Si. At her words, the assembled angels fell silent, grief shadowing their faces. Their civilization had spent 10,000 years nurturing Merlot's heavenly court into the marvel it was today. The 9 concentric defense rings protecting the Angel Nebula had not appeared overnight. Now, faced with abandoning their home, they would have to rebuild everything from scratch. And habitable worlds were exceedingly rare. Finding a planet with conditions even remotely comparable to their beloved realm would be a monumental challenge. He-Si raised her voice. We can debate the future of Merlot's heavenly court later. Right now, our sole focus must be Morgana's destruction. We must strike like lions against rabbits, deploy every celestial armament, every Tianji and Tianblade fleet. With overwhelming force, we will exterminate Morgana's demon legions in a single, decisive blow. A murmur of agreement rippled through the assembly. The angels had no better plan. Resolute, they pledged their swords and wings to King Tianji's cause, ready to unleash their full might against the encroaching darkness. Chapter text with King Tianji's unparalleled wisdom at the helm, the angel civilization was poised for a triumphant comeback. Yet as the mighty angel legion assembled beyond the edges of the Milky Way, their advance was abruptly halted. The barrier was not cosmic turbulence or a hostile race, but a simple decree. Under no circumstances would their forces be allowed to penetrate the galactic frontier. Ethan frowned as he watched the Angel Legion's cruisers drift to a standstill. His relationship with the angels had never been cordial, and no amount of diplomacy could override this prohibition. Behind him, she paced the observation deck, her brow furrowing in disbelief. "Did you see that?" she muttered, eyes glued to the tactical display. "The Tiandao civilization actually fields this many combat celestial bodies?" Ethan crossed his arms. "I expected they'd have some. After all, they're the sovereign power of the unknown and universe. But this..." He gestured to the streaming icons representing Tiandao battle units. This level of firepower rivals the angel civilization itself. She shook her head. Resource gathering beyond the known universe is notoriously difficult. Sure, they control vast regions, but supply lines are stretched thin. I thought their fleet might be formidable, but not to this extent. Ethan's lips curled into a wry smile. That's the genius of the angels. They've ruled the known universe for millennia. Every stellar mine, every drifting derelict, they siphoned it all to manufacture those small timepieces and battle celestial bodies. They've been amassing raw computing power like no one else can. He glanced back at the paused fleet. It's terrifying to think what they could do if that army breached the Milky Way's defenses. Precisely, Ethan said softly, which is why we'll need more than wit and will to secure our borders. King Tianji's plans are brilliant, but daring as ever. If we can't trust the angels with this mission, we'll have to find another way, and fast. A tense silence fell over the bridge as both officers contemplated the unfolding crisis. Beyond the stars, two superpowers stood ready to clash once more, while the fate of countless worlds hung in the balance. Ethan stared in awe at the armada arrayed before him. 50 massive combat celestials, living war engines of the Tiandao civilization, hovered in perfect formation. He had always doubted whether the Tiandao could truly rival the angelic empires. Now, confronted by this overwhelming display of power, he knew the truth. Not only could they match the angels, they had eclipsed them entirely. At the heart of this impenetrable line stood Pan Zhen, newly ascended to godhood and entrusted with the critical mission of intercepting the angel fleet. This assignment was his chance to prove himself, and he radiated confidence. Your Highness Ethan, Pan Zhen announced coolly over the deep space comlink, you have reached the edge of Tiandao airspace. Please desist. Ethan listened as Pan Zhen's celestial guardians held their positions. 50 combat celestials, bristling with energy weapons, formed a living shield behind his challenger. Pan Zhen had never led such a formidable force, nor had he ever felt so certain of victory. He knew that if each war engine deployed its antimatter sky punishment bomb in unison, the entire Tao Ti fleet would be obliterated in under a second. Even the angel civilization, with its own celestial war beasts, would falter against such destructive might. Silence fell across the void as both commanders weighed their next move, the fate of two great civilizations hanging in the balance. Chapter 278. I've been down with a nasty cold for days now, so today's update is a bit late. Archangel Hexy, our systems are locked onto by the enemy's combat celestials. All sensor arrays are jammed. We can't track their attack vectors. Archangel Hexy, our space-time barrier is fully online. Energy reserves are at 100%. Hexy's angelic host tensed at once. 50 enemy combat celestials bearing down on them. This was pressure beyond anything they'd ever encountered. When had Heaven's legions ever been targeted by such overwhelming power? They hadn't even felt compelled to deploy their own combat celestials against the demonic hordes. From the other side of the void came a calm, resonant voice. We bear no ill intent, God Pan Zhen Tian. Hexy flicked her wings in mild surprise. She'd heard rumors that Pan Zhen Tian had ascended to godhood within the Tiandao civilization, but she never imagined that a newly minted deity would be commanding such a critical engagement. In truth, the credit or blame belonged to Ethan. Lately, he'd grown so lazy he'd simply delegated the entire operation to Pan Zhen Tian and a battalion of advanced AIs. Pan Zhen had no inkling of Ethan's ulterior motives, but he assumed that Ethan was investing immense resources into the war effort, like someone paying top coin for rare horse bones. The thought of such lavish backing only steeled his resolve, and he approached the battle with the utmost solemnity. Her Highness He-Shi's proposal faltered under Pan Zhen's cool scrutiny. You have the Sky Blade Squadron and the Tianji Combat Series escorting you, he said evenly, and yet you claim no ill intent? Your Highness, that's the greatest joke I've ever heard. Pan Zhen stood with utter calm. His orders were explicit. Intercept the angel army. The sovereign angel host might be permitted to pass, but she could enter only by herself. No entourage, no reinforcements. In all the known galaxy, no one would question the angel civilization's caution in denying 6 celestial champions and hundreds of thousands of super warriors entry into the angel nebula. Ethan had leveraged that very logic to stall He-Shi here, fully aware of her objectives, yet determined to thwart them. With a curt nod, she forced herself to lower her tone. "I request an audience with the God King." She meant every word, and in this crisis, she had no alternative. In every quadrant from the Angel Nebula to the furthest border systems, the current strife between mortals and angels was no secret. Even the most extravagant theatrics couldn't mask the reality of war. Silence fell as Pan-Gen considered her plea, the tension between them echoing the larger conflict that raged beyond these walls. "You really underestimate Heaven's resolve," Ethan said, his voice deceptively calm. Hesi's blood boiled at the memory. Ethan had convinced her to trade her precious dark Sioux silver for a bundle of state-of-the-art technology and raw materials, and she'd fallen for it. What kind of tycoon, awash in wealth, needed such a crude barter? She crushed her palm into her desk. How could she have been so blind? She only now realized the true purpose of her generosity. Those blueprints and prototypes, propulsion matrices, energy converters, adaptive shielding alloys, weren't the Seraphim's crown jewels, but they were the product of centuries of angelic refinement. Ethan would dissect every detail, map out her civilization's strengths and weaknesses, then shrug and move on. She'd already heard rumors that the Tuchong Dagger faction had done just that, and dismissed the angelic civilization as unworthy of serious attention. Good for them, she thought sourly. At least she'd bought herself some time. Anger and envy warred within her. Ethan's personal legion of war angels was legendary. He commanded squadrons that outnumbered any Seraphim host. She had planned to bring in her Skyblade Squadron and the Skyborn Combat Corps to pressure him into a better deal. With such a fearsome force at her back, surely even someone as reckless as Ethan, would think twice before sparring with the Seraphim. But he'd never intended to negotiate. As she stared at the polished insignia on her desk, an angel's wing poised for battle, she knew the next move rested with her. If Ethan wanted to play this game, she would raise the stakes. And this time, she would not be the one outmaneuvered. She hadn't expected Ethan to marshal 50 battle celestials at once. Even if those warforged beings hailed from the mighty Tiandao civilization, the angel civilization no longer possessed anywhere near that kind of strength. If they came to blows, both sides would be wounded. The angels might escape with only minor losses, but the Tiandao forces would surely stagger, though they would not be utterly annihilated. "I'll pass your request on to the king," Pan-Gen said, keeping his tone neutral as he bowed slightly. He turned and delivered He-Shi's petition to Chang Wei in the throne room. Every word he spoke, every gesture he made from that moment on would need to be measured and precise. One misstep could cost him dearly. Afterward, Pan-Gen found himself in an awkward position. Chang Wei had summoned 2 Tiandao gods, each a deputy general or adjutant, he couldn't recall which. He'd assumed they were there to keep an eye on him, to make sure he didn't exceed his authority. Yet when he asked them to confirm details of the plan, they both replied curtly that as the coach, the decisions lay entirely with him. Their deference left him momentarily speechless. Here were senior officers who should have been supervising his every move, instead granting him full autonomy. Pan-Gen closed his eyes for a moment, collecting himself. With a mind honed to god-level acuity, he had deciphered the labyrinthine laws and protocols of the heavenly civilization in less than a day. If even the generals deferred to him now, it was up to him to wield that authority responsibly and to ensure his choices served both the Tiandao and the fragile peace with the angel civilization. Ethan knew all too well why the lieutenants and adjutants existed, to temper his authority as commander. Pan-Gen, his chief aide, accepted this check and balance as routine. Yet when Ethan had entrusted him with unfettered decision-making power, Pan-Gen couldn't help but grow wary. It wasn't possible that his 2 deputy generals and their staff were so inept that they couldn't assess situations, weigh advantages and disadvantages, and respond on the fly. No, after running the idea through his mind, Pan-Gen realized what was really happening. The ancient city council, 10,000 years old, was testing him. His private comm unit crackled, pulling him from his thoughts. "Your Majesty," Pan-Gen announced with restrained urgency, "King Hexi of the angelic civilization, the Heavenly Foundation Sovereign, requests an immediate audience." Ethan straightened in his command chair. "King Hexi?" He's brought his forces all the way here? That's hardly a gesture of goodwill. Panjentian, what do you make of this? From beside Ethan, the goddess Panjentian gave a soft exhalation, her concern palpable, but Panjan held his composure. I stand ready to execute your orders, Your Majesty. Ethan's voice was calm but firm. Don't worry, I've confirmed that Huaye and Ruoning have been resurrected. Panjan, who had served in the city for years, understood exactly what his lord meant and what he intended. Without hesitation, he bowed. At once, my lord. Turning, Panjan approached Princess Hexi. Your Highness, the king is currently occupied with matters of state. He has not yet reviewed your petition. Princess Hishi lifted an elegant brow. She had expected resistance, but that did not lessen the sting of disappointment. Still, she steadied herself. Very well, I will wait for His Majesty's return. She paused, her eyes narrowing slightly. Just so long as the angels remain beyond our borders, I will not interfere. Panjan inclined his head. In truth, the Celestial Legion had no reason to set foot on any planet. They could operate perfectly from Threadai. Desolate reaches outside the Milky Way. Yet today's events had delivered a harsh lesson. Their greatest weapon no longer gave them free rein of the known universe. Wherever angels had ever passed, none had dared to oppose them, until now. I've been cut off from an entire galaxy. Talk about frustrating. Hexi could feel the doubts rippling through everyone's hearts, but there was nothing she could do to stop it. Her tactics were flawed. Even with the celestial supercomputer analyzing every possible outcome, countless rumors and half-truths still spread unchecked. She closed her eyes and admitted, forget it. Let them believe what they want. It's my fault. I, the Tianji king, am incompetent. Shaking her head, Hexi still didn't understand why Ethan had refused to meet with her. Meanwhile, Huaye and Ruoning lay unconscious in the revival chamber, hearts racing at the thought of what they'd just survived. When they came back to life, fear still clung to them like a second skin. Huaye sprang to his feet, glaring at Carl's back. That jerk spent all his time tinkering with the black hole engine instead of saving me, he roared, fury coloring his words. Ruoning, pale and trembling, could only watch as chaos threatened to boil over around them. Chapter 279, Huaye and Ruoning's Upgrades. Ruoning's laugh was cold and cutting. Do you really think you're worth anything? To Karna Turtle's son, you're nothing more than another asset, like the Sky Slag Army. The black hole engine is leagues more valuable than you. Huaye's face flushed with anger. Worthless? That's rich coming from you. If Carl had trusted me with a void engine, I wouldn't have lost in the first place. Ruoning bristled. After all, she was a fourth-generation divine body. Paired with a void engine, no one, not even she, could have destroyed her so effortlessly. The two stood, chest puffed out, glaring at the doorway, just as the god of death himself strode in. Carl, they greeted him curtly, Ruoning with icy dignity, Huaye with barely concealed fury. Carl met their stares with utter composure. Listen carefully, he began. She and I are both extraordinarily powerful. It's no use depending on the descendants of Tiandao, or even on Ethan. In fact, the sooner you two carve out your own paths, the better. Huaye scowled. He'd been counting on Ruoning's divine body and his coveted black hole engine to keep him safe. The memory of Ruoning being reduced to ash by Heishi still haunted him, and his fear flared anew. Seeing his disgruntled expression, Carl didn't bother consoling him. Instead, he produced a pair of obsidian vials, each crackling with otherworldly energy. I've prepared upgrades for both of you, Carl announced. These enhancements will augment your divine essence and fortify your void capabilities. Accept them, and you'll gain the power you crave, perhaps even enough to stand against Hishi. Ruoning and Huaye exchanged a long look. Ambition, fear, and curiosity warred in their eyes. Finally, one after the other, they stepped forward to claim their fates. I won't let you down this time. Carl, the death god, exhaled heavily. If it weren't absolutely necessary, he wouldn't have sacrificed his void armaments and equipment to upgrade Huaye and Ruoning. But without those upgrades, neither of them could hope to stand against Hishi, much less Tiandao and Ethan. Reluctantly, he devised a plan to strip away less essential void weapons. He even tapped into the void essence reserved for the Four Knights program, since there weren't enough stellar cores available to trigger the black hole singularity. In short, Carl couldn't afford to waste a single ounce of void matter, and that was why he'd gone to the trouble of recovering the black hole engine in the first place. Leaning against the laboratory's cold metal wall, Carl ran a tired hand through his hair. Honestly, he muttered, without a fourth-generation divine body, there's no point in proceeding. At his words, Huaye and Ruoning exchanged excited glances. Finally, Huaye cleared his throat and asked, "So, about my upgrade, we're talking a fourth-generation divine body plus a reloaded black hole engine, right?" Carl nodded. "Exactly. And this time, I've rewritten the engine's code, added multiple program branches to optimize stability under combat conditions." Ruoning's eyes gleamed. "That should give us the edge we need against He-She's void fluctuations." Ethan stepped forward, placing a steadying hand on Huaye's shoulder. "With these upgrades, we stand a chance," he said. "Thank you, Carl. Thank you both, Huaye and Ruoning. Let's make sure none of our sacrifices go to waste." Carl allowed himself a small, weary smile. "Then let's get to work." Death God Carl's voice echoed calmly through the Celestial Council chamber. He-She's full array of techniques is now laid bare. Next time King Huaye faces him, he can deliver a truly crippling blow. Huaye, regal in his flowing robes, eyes alight with anticipation, could hardly contain himself. "I wouldn't go so far as to promise He-She's absolute destruction. That depends on how the battle unfolds, but I can guarantee we'll neutralize almost every one of his tactics." Carl inclined his head in approval. He rotated the great obsidian clock at his side, its hands tracing out arcane algorithms and the void. With each rotation, new counters to He-She's powers sprang to life, rendering them effectively useless. "Excellent. And what of Ethan's grandson?" he asked next. Huaye's expression grew thoughtful. They both knew that dismantling He-She was only part of the larger agenda. The true prize was the secret of Ethan's Tao, his war god body, and the legendary king's treasury. If Ethan's only trump cards are his divine war god physique and that treasure house, Huaye replied slowly, then he poses no real obstacle. We can tailor our strategies to undermine both. Carl offered a faint, indifferent smile. He had no intention of revealing the full scope of Ethan's might. Such knowledge would only give Huaye pause. Instead, he turned the clock once more, letting its shifting gears and glowing runes speak of the countermeasures still to come. Huaye's eyes glittered as he leaned forward. "You told us Ethan has a void engine, didn't you? Even a concubine might be granted one. What chance would she have against him without it?" He straightened, meeting Carl's gaze. "Your Majesty, I insist on examining these mechanisms myself." Carl, the god of death, remained impassive. From the start, he'd planned to use Huaye as a pawn in his grand experiment on Ethan, and Huaye knew it. Yet death held no real terror for him. Both he and Ruoning could be resurrected. Still, he had no desire to be killed if he could avoid it. "I would also request a fourth-generation divine body and a void engine," Huaye continued smoothly. "With those gifts, I can help your Majesty subdue, and if necessary eliminate, Ethan's concubine and his queen." Ruoning didn't hesitate. "Carl, I want the same enhancements, a fourth-generation divine body and a void engine." Carl's expression flickered. He'd anticipated this demand, and knew it was the price of ensuring a fair test. "Very well," he said at last. "Both of you will receive the fourth-generation divine body and a void engine." He forced himself to sound confident, though inwardly he grimaced at the cost. If Ethan was to be properly measured, his opponents needed real power. Before either could speak again, Huaye pressed on. "And what of Sumali and Kunpeng? Will they be assigned to our side, or must we count them among Ethan's forces?" Carl's eyes narrowed. He understood perfectly. Huaye was maneuvering to have Carl's own troops intercept Ethan's men. The trial of Ethan was about to begin, and every player was positioning for the coming clash. Death God Carl folded his arms, his tone calm and measured. "All the void matter I've gathered has been used to upgrade both of your fourth-generation divine bodies and void engines." Huaye waved a hand, impatience flickering at the edge of his composure. "So, when do these upgrades actually activate? I don't mean to rush you, but we need every advantage if we're going to corner Liuyang's girl and Pan Zhen." Carl nodded. "At your command, King Huaye, we can begin immediately." Despite his outward calm, Carl was anything but patient. Word had reached him that He-She had broken away from the Angel Nebula with his fleet, charting a course for the Milky Way and a potential alliance with the Tiandao civilization. Alarmed by the threat this posed, the Death God had fast-tracked the enhancements for both Huaye and Ruoning. The black hole engines themselves still operated at 60-unit frequency, but they'd gained several foolproof functions, simplified protocols that, while not as refined as the outright mastery of void algorithms, were more than capable of outsmarting even seasoned adversaries. Coupled with the engine's ultra-high-frequency output, those new features meant a foe could be pelted with rapid, seemingly random strikes until they fell. Ethan punched the air, grinning wildly. Of course, the fourth-generation divine body is the top priority. I can't believe I forgot to have that bastard Carl boost my abilities. Now I'll be unstoppable, with every skirt in the galaxy bowing at my feet. Ruoning merely rolled her eyes. She wasn't opposed to Ethan getting the stronger. After all, her own happiness benefited, but she'd hoped he'd treat the divine body upgrade with more respect. It wasn't a toy. Heh, Ethan continued, voice crackling with excitement. My dark energy drive is off the charts right now, absolutely through the roof. He could feel power roaring through his veins. No wonder Ruoning had favored the divine body over the void engine. The divine body was the foundation of your strength. The void engine was just a plug-in enhancement. Given the choice, you always prioritize the core system. And now Ethan had both. Just you wait, she! Ethan's coming for you, he shouted, already imagining the conquest ahead. Meanwhile, Ruoning finished her own upgrade sequence. She ran a full systems check, scan of her vitals, recalibration of the divine body, synchronizing protocols with the void engine. Everything registered green, but one detail caught her eye. The void engine now carried permissions for multiple high-level chronoclocks. Ruoning frowned. Those clocks governed time flow across entire star sectors. Granting access to them was no small matter. She tapped her console, fingers flying over the hollow keys. If someone had really handed her the keys to the universe's greatest time regulators, well, that was a game changer. Ethan, flush with triumph, didn't notice her concern. He bounded forward, dark energy drive humming like a warhead. Ruoning took a steadying breath. The fourth-generation divine body and the void engine in tandem were what legends were made of, but with those chronoclock permissions lurking in the background, this upgrade might be more dangerous than either of them suspected. Carl is being way too cautious, Ruoning snapped, frowning at the Grand Clock's security settings. How was she supposed to bypass those permissions? And with a calibration of only 12, just 2 notches above the Heavenly Concubine and Queen of Heaven's void engines, it was hardly impressive. Chapter 280, Death. Ethan teams up with Liang Bing. Ruoning stared at the void engine's diagnostics, torn between pride and frustration. On its own merits, the prototype was impressive, but next to Huaye's model, it felt woefully underpowered. Huaye's engine ran at 60 frequency units. Ruoning had hoped to hit at least 20 with her design. Instead, the readings stalled at a mere 12. At that rate, any advanced civilization, say, the Tiandao in the unknown universe, would assume our known universe void engine couldn't afford a real upgrade. Ruoning slammed her fist on the console. It's still capped at 60, Ethan. He's never going to improve our black hole engine, is he? Huaye slumped in his chair, exasperated. So what do we do now? First, we shore up morale, Ruoning replied sharply. Have you noticed how low your troops' spirits have fallen? If we keep hemming and hawing like this, they'll lose faith and scatter at the first sign of trouble. Huaye waved a hand dismissively. Morale? This isn't the age of drums and banners. Ruoning's eyes flashed. Times change, tactics evolve, but soldiers still need confidence in their leaders and their technology. If they believe we can't hold our own against our rivals, they'll look for greener pastures. Huaye ran a hand through his hair. All right, I'll push R&D harder, but we need resources, energy cores, exotic matter stabilizers. We're short on both. Ruoning leaned forward. I know where we can get them. There's an abandoned research vessel drifting near the Orion Rift. It houses quantum oscillators and dark matter matrices left behind after that pirate raid. Salvage even half of it, and we'll break the 20 frequency threshold. Huaye's posture straightened. That's exactly what we need. Assemble a salvage squadron at once. And Ethan, Ruoning turned to her lieutenant, coordinate morale officers, arrange demonstrations of our current capabilities, brief the troops, do whatever it takes to keep their confidence high. Ethan saluted crisply. Understood, Commander. Consider it done. With the plan set, deploying a salvage team to secure vital components and mobilizing morale units to rally the forces, Ruoning, Huaye, and Ethan sprang into action. The race to upgrade the black hole engine had begun, and the fate of their army hinged on swift success. I've secured the God of Death, Karl's backing, and upgraded the black hole engine. My power is nothing like it was before. Huaye watched the display in stunned silence. He knew how drastically the rules of engagement had shifted. Where once battles had depended on sheer morale, now a single, sufficiently powerful god could obliterate an entire legion on his own. The only problem, Huaye admitted with a weary shake of his head, is that we don't have a combat celestial body. At last, he'd grasped the true purpose of these fighting vessels, and without one, the Tianzi Legion would be easy prey for the angels or the heavenly Tao. To be sure, for someone of Huaye's own strength, a celestial vessel was hardly essential. As Lingxi had explained from the start, when two vessels offered the same capabilities, the smaller frame always delivered greater power. A god's real gain from a combat celestial body lay in its extra computing horsepower. When Queen Yan had faced He-Shi's trial, the gulf between her performance with and without support from Tianren No. 7 had been undeniable proof of that fact. Ethan studied the battlefield with keen eyes. When two gods of equal rank clash, their combat celestial constructs can only serve as support. They're not powerful enough to decide the fight on their own. True, they could handle Huaye's Taoti, but against his Tianzi legions, backed by dozens of Tianren-class constructs and battle squads, they'd be obliterated instantly. Even Ruoning herself, if surrounded by enough constructs, couldn't slip away through a wormhole. The gap in computing power would leave her no escape. We may not have any constructs, Ruoning said coolly, but that only makes them easier to seize. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Deathsong Academy might be too cash-strapped to field its own constructs, but they'd once tried to abduct Xingming, and if He-Shi hadn't moved fast, Xingming would already be gone. Capturing a few constructs would be far simpler than snagging star spirits, since constructs can't flee. Huaye's eyes gleamed. Is that so? He murmured, clearly intrigued by the plan. Ethan stood just inside the command deck's viewport, arms folded, watching the glittering strand of stars that marked the Milky Way's outer rim. Around him, Admiral Huaye tapped impatiently on the console. If we could somehow trap those celestial Valkyries in their short battle skirts, Huaye grumbled, we might still have a chance. He broke off and swiped the air once more. But our real problem is the power imbalance. We can't face the Angel Armada head-on. Ruoning, her silver hair tied back, nodded in agreement, but said nothing. Both she and Huaye had speculated all too often that if He-Shi fell under Tiandao's sway, the prize vault of divine knowledge and the angelic armory would slip forever from their grasp. Only the fear of that outcome had prompted the god of death Karl to ease his constraints, awarding them the Void Engine and a fourth-generation god body. Each gift carried strings, of course, but they were their best hope. What are we waiting for, then? Huaye shot Ethan a sharp look. Karl's grandson is frantic over any sign of an angel, Tiandao alliance. We need to move before they can unite. Ethan turned, meeting Ruoning's calm gaze, then wheeled to the comm panel. All right, he said. Plot a course immediately. We rendezvous with Grandfather's fleet at the Helix Nebula, full speed to the interception point outside the galaxy. Before the officer in charge could respond, the deck lights dimmed and a comm alert chimed. Atto's voice crackled through the speakers. Admiral, he said, tone neutral, our sensors have just detected the angelic fleet. They've been stopped, just beyond the Milky Way's edge. Liang Bing, who had been standing quietly by, let out an exasperated sigh. At that moment, another voice, crisp and mocking, filtered through her earpiece. Liang Bing, I hear you've taken heavy losses on Earth. How's that family reputation holding up? Liang Bing's jaw tightened. She glanced at Ethan, hungry for a target at whom to unleash her anger. The coming battle would have to wait. First, they'd have to survive their own tempers. Ethan's shout rang out before he could stop it. Karl, you old silver coin, why are you haunting me? What business is it of yours whether I succeed or fail? However heavy the loss, it's not your place to gloat. Now get out of my sight. Liang Bing bristled beside him. You talk about heavy losses, yet you don't even understand what's really happening. She shot an accusing look into the empty air, where death god Karl hovered beyond sight. In truth, Karl was as ignorant of the unfolding drama between Liang Bing and the devil as anyone. Ever since the Tiandao civilization annexed the Milky Way, a mysterious war fog had enveloped the galaxy, eluding even the cosmic tree model's calculations. Karl had reached out to Liang Bing for his own dark designs, hoping to bend her to his will. But Liang Bing hadn't set foot outside the Milky Way in centuries, and with the Tiandao blockade sealing every star route, no one could have guessed that the goddess Karl once courted had become Ethan's ally, let alone his confidant. My Bing Bing is pure and innocent, she declared, voice ringing with conviction. How could such a ridiculous rumor ever be true? From the shadows came Karl's low, mocking laugh. In this war, dear Bing Bing, nothing is ever as it seems. Liang Bing's eyes narrowed as she faced the ancient figure before her. You think I'd ever consider turning into your pawn? Don't make me laugh. Karl, the death god, exhaled a low chuckle. Revenge can be so sweet, he taunted. Surely you've given it some thought? Not 1 second, Liang Bing shot back, her voice ice-cold. He'd known Karl for tens of thousands of years, and she still distrusted him as much as ever, especially now when her strength had been so badly depleted. If she fell into one of his schemes again, she might never recover. Despite her outward defiance, Liang Bing had deliberately fed Karl false information, her mind racing through the lies she'd woven. From his expression, she could tell that her deception was working. Karl's gaze drifted toward the horizon, where storm clouds of power gathered. And what of Ethan? He asked. His power has grown abnormally fast, far beyond what even Kesha ever managed in life. If he were to join forces with he-she and the Heavenly Tao civilization, no one could stand against them. Liang Bing stiffened at the mention of Ethan's name. Believe what you want, she said. I won't be fooled by your empty promises. Karl leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Exactly, he murmured to himself. Ethan and the Heavenly Tao are indeed unstoppable together, but Liang Bing fears that alliance. She's convinced they will strike against her demon realm first. That gives me an opening. He straightened, turning back to Liang Bing with that same sly grin. Then let us be clear. I offer you a true partnership. Together, we could harness Ethan's power and ensure the Heavenly Tao are the ones on the defensive. Liang Bing's heart pounded. She refused to show how much his words had unsettled her, but deep down, she wondered if she had overplayed her hand. As Karl's offer hung in the air, the fate of her people and of Ethan teetered on the edge of a razor's blade. Huoye's army has already seized the mellow heavenly palace. Just as I warned, his sudden rise has upset the balance of power. Even if he can't defeat Ethan himself, he'll still deal a crippling blow to the Heavenly Tao civilization. Liang Bing, aren't you going to capitalize on this opportunity? If there's truly something to gain, you can be sure I will, Liang Bing replied with a cold laugh. But remember, when the snipe and the clam fight, it's the fisherman who profits. The real question is, who's the fisherman here, me or you?